Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. We'll try to start on time. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing on a Wednesday night in November, but the fact that you're here, we appreciate. My name is Curtis Pratt. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Town of Raymond, and I have the privilege of being joined by our Director of Planning and Development, Tyler Nelson. A few housekeeping items before we begin. If there's an emergency, there are two exits on either side of the stage. There's the entrance at the top, the exit, sorry, at the top on the second floor of the theater, and then down through the main entrance. Our muster point will be across the street at the museum, and if you need a washroom, they're in the rotunda. Tonight I'll give a brief presentation as to what Council's role is, what my role is, and an overview of Council directives to administration since 2006, and a brief history on this proposed project. And then...
My name is Tyler Nelson. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the town. I've been with the town for a year and a half. Previously to that, I was with is that a little bit better? Okay. So my name is Tyler Nelson. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the town. I've been with the town for a year and a half. Previously to that, I was with another municipality for 18 years doing development. And so I've been here that long. Part of my objective tonight, Curtis will talk a little bit about his role. I'll talk a little bit about what my office does. I'll talk a little bit about how the application procedure works. I think there's been some questions about how that works. A little bit of the history of Knights Crossings, starting kind of back at a little bit at the annexation stage. I'll talk about the character of the development, so what it is actually that they're proposing to do. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the procedural things. What are the things that council is using to make considerations for these bylaw amendments? So I'll kind of go through all of that and anyway, try to answer questions at the end for you.
So following our presentations, we'll definitely open up the floor for questions. There's a mic on either side of the theater here down at the bottom of the stairs. Please come and ask your questions. We don't want someone to monopolize the mic, so please come with a question and maybe a follow-up and then give way to someone else. And then if there's additional time at the end and you have another question that we haven't answered, definitely you're welcome to come up and ask that. And as always, we appreciate everyone coming. Let's keep this as polite and respectful as we can, and we appreciate your interest. So with that, now that that's all out of the way, let's begin. So as mentioned, my name is Curtis Pratt. I was hired by the town of Raymond in 2008, and from a series of years I've been able to continue to work here, and council in 2018 decided to appoint me as the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Raymond after Scott Barton retired. So my role, I am council's only employee. I work for council. Everyone else that works for the town of Raymond technically works for me. My role is to help council govern within the authorities delegated to them through the Municipal Government Act. And it's a 624-page book that is not that exciting to read, but it outlines what a municipality can and cannot do in the province of Alberta. And with that book, we help council establish a strategic plan, which is their vision for the community. And then we help implement that plan. We help them set their capital and operating budgets, and we provide insight, guidance, information, and in the end, council makes decision. An elected official's job is to listen, think, and vote according to their conscience. Recognizing that there are always many viewpoints, it's impossible to perfectly reflect the will of everyone. Voters elect people to make decisions on their behalf. An elected official will formulate their position based upon information they've received, the views of their constituents, and their own judgment, not to act merely as poll takers. If at the end of the term the community feels that their judgments no longer reflects their values, that's why we have elections, they can choose someone else. And that's how democracy holds leaders accountable while still allowing them to lead. So a lot of discussion has been made as to why council isn't here tonight. And I'll just be direct. My direction to them was for them not to be here tonight. Legal guidance, ORSC planning guidance has also indicated that that is a correct assumption, and I feel it is appropriate. Once a public hearing is called for a planning matter, it's different than if it was a noise bylaw or a complaint about a user fee in charge. Those are separate, but if in this book, if it falls under Part 17 of the Municipal Government Act, it's a planning and development consideration. And as such, when a public hearing is called, council is not supposed to talk with residents even at all, because we're trying to protect the viability and the sanctity of that hearing process. So imagine if tonight, instead of having a public meeting with the public found out that council was meeting with the developers 3 days before the public hearing, or a week before the public hearing. I don't imagine that would be looked upon too favorably. There'd be accusations of, buying favor or influence or bias. Same with having just the public here. People have said, well, why don't you just invite the developers then too? Well, then we're having a public hearing, and a public hearing is what we're having on Monday. And so we're trying to follow this process as best we can. There's a principle called procedural fairness, and I'm not an expert, but basically what it means is two parties, no matter what the decision is, can feel that they've been given a fair opportunity. They've had the opportunity to present their perspective for or against something, and no matter what the outcome is, they felt they were treated fairly, even if the outcome isn't what they wanted. And that's the intent of what we're trying to achieve here. And so I'm confident in that decision. I can appreciate if some of you don't, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But in the end, as I kind of mentioned before, my job is to provide council with guidance based upon what's in this book. And that's what I'm doing. And so if you have questions about that, feel free to come and talk to me about it another time. So just a little background. In 2006, it was just a federal census had happened. There was a census in 2001, and Raymond had a population of 3,200 people. In 2006, Raymond's population was 3,205 people. The council at the time had a serious conversation internally at the council table where they said, this isn't a good trend. We've had effectively a 10-year period with almost no growth. We're concerned that if something doesn't change, negative growth is likely to occur or could occur, and they didn't want that to happen. And so from that time, they said, well, what are we? Well, we're a bedroom community to Lethbridge. As much as Raymond is passionate about its history, and it should, 90% of the community leaves town every day to go to work and then drive home at the end of the day. And so they said, well, what do we want to attract? We want to attract young families. Well, what do young families want? They want amenities. And so whether you agree or disagree, since 2009, council's built the Aquatic Center, improvements to the ice arena, Centennial Park, Victoria Sports Park. We did the self-diversion drainage project to deal with some of the drainage issues we had, and be able to do that, we were able to improve the golf course. And walking trail extensions, we attracted Axia Fiber and a bunch of other kind of initiatives, all with the singular goal to attract more families to the community. Since 2006, Raymond's been fortunate. There's been well over 320 new homes built in the community. And a lot, I'd say 120 to 150 of those were fortunate in the sense that it was the original three cul-de-sacs down on the southwest end of town. The planning process for those lots had already happened, and so it wasn't like they were a direct result of this conversation of council. But it was a significant period of growth that brought in a lot of families. And collectively, Raymond's up about, we don't have an exact census number, we wait for the federal censuses, but officially, according to the province anyway, we have a population of 4,510 as of last year. So it's 1,300 people approximately that have moved to the community since 2006. Part of, maybe I'll just go into this next part. So this is where I'll go. This decision by council in 2006 to invest in the community has been carried on by subsequent councils since that time. Our previous council has a strategic plan, and the number one priority under the growth category is to expand our residential and commercial assessment base. And that has been consistent since that time. So that has been the direction that, and I'll be honest, Scott has tasked me when I was working for Scott, and now that I'm the CAO, that's the direction that I receive from council, is to find ways to grow our residential and commercial tax base. So now kind of on to why we're here. On October 21st, 2021, I received a phone call from Avis & Young saying that a national retailer was looking to relocate, wanted to invest in the community. Based on all the guidance that I had received since 2008, when I've been working for the town, that was a positive interaction. And so I worked with the developers. We scoured the GIS maps looking for possible parcels of land. And when you look in our downtown, there is no space for something of this size to go there. We looked at a whole bunch of vacant parcels on the periphery in town, and the location that has now been proposed was determined by the developer to be the best location. It's taking a series of, 5, almost 6 years to get to this point. There's been multiple people, multiple different groups representing developers working through this process. And we do now have a finalized draft that was presented to the public on October 3rd, 2025, with a public hearing date scheduled for November 10th. And so this is kind of why we're at this point. Another question that I'll just mention, an annexation did occur on July 1st, 2024. We started that process with the County of Warner in 2022, and it's taken a couple of years to work through that time. So that's all I'll say for now. I will just reiterate as well, as hard as it is to understand, council does not have a bias one way or the other for this project. The public hearing will be the time that the public has the opportunity to present their comments. The developer will have an opportunity to present their comments. They'll ask information from external parties and third-party stakeholders. And after that point, when they feel they have enough information to make a decision, they'll either decide to close the public hearing and they can make a decision that night, they can table it for a future date, or they can adjourn the public hearing, and Tyler will talk a little bit more about the nuances of each. But if they adjourn it, that'll be to allow council additional time to get answers to questions that they have, not necessarily questions that the public has. So we just want to be clear about that. I'll stop. Tyler, we'll turn the time over to you. Sure. And then after Tyler's done, we'll definitely please encourage you to come and ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer as much information as we can. So thank you. All
right, so Curtis has a different role than I do. My role is to be, almost the completely impartial, review of applications that come in. So my role is this. People often wonder, well, how does this ball get rolling and how does it get started? What happens quite often is we'll have somebody interested in doing a business, and it might not be this case, that it happens all the time. They'll come into our office and they'll say something to the effect of, we'd like to start a business, or we have a business idea, we're looking for a place to do it, or they maybe have a spot that they want to do it, and they come into my office and say, okay, does this work with the existing land use bylaw? And so we'll work through that. We'll see if it's permitted or discretionary. We'll try to figure out what is it that you want to do exactly, what are the ramifications, what are the needs. If it's something large enough, it'll require, and I'm going to apologize right now, there's so many acronyms, you're going to get blasted by them, and I'll do my best to explain them. Does it require an ASP, so an area structure plan? It's kind of like a neighborhood plan if it's big enough. So they'll come into my office, and we'll try to find solutions to where they can go. My job isn't to make determinations one way or the other. I'm just looking at their application to see, does it work with what we have existing in the bylaw? Does it work with the rules that have been set out already? What often happens at that point is there's often this conversation. It goes something like this: please don't let anyone know about this, which is proper and good. As a business owner, they want to have confidence that their idea doesn't get stolen, that their idea doesn't become rumors in the community, that their idea is heard at a time when it's finalized, and that they can present it in a whole and complete package. I understand quite a few comments have been like, oh, this came out of nowhere. And yes, I understand it, but it's a success for me in my office when nobody feels like there's been any kind of a leak or anything like that, where they can speak in confidence. And so quite often, if, like in the case of this development, there's much more that needs to be done other than looking at a map and finding a spot. What we do at that point is we start coordination with several people. We start coordination with our engineers. We start coordination with our planners to see if what they want to do is even feasible. There's unique issues in Raymond as far as especially drainage. We have some areas of town that servicing doesn't work well. And so what we do is we work with these people all in the background, and that's what's been happening for the last, well, as long as I've been here, last year and a half. We've been working with the same group. So in my office, that's going on in the background. If we were doing it correctly, nobody really knows about it. Our engineers will know. That being said, any business owner, any developer can choose to say anything they want to the public. And so, you know, sometimes they'll have conversations informally or formally with people, and that can start some rumors. You know, they can put a float in the parade, they can do whatever they want, that's their choice. But as far as our office is concerned, we keep it confidential, and that's proper. And you know, the last thing we want to do is break confidence with people. One of the things we do is we look at the existing statutory documents that we have, and when I say statutory documents, that's Municipal Development Plan, Land Use Bylaw, MGA, to see if what they're proposing fits, to see if it works. Like I mentioned before, large developments like this have to have an ASP attached to them. When they're big like this, you need to have more around it that gets approved. So one of the things that council will do is in this case, we're looking to do a bylaw that is an adoption of an ASP. And then we look to see if there's any amendments that need to be made. In the case of this particular development, there's 3 bylaws that are being talked about. They are in order for a reason. The first is an amendment to the Municipal Development Plan. The Municipal Development Plan is basically an overarching guide for where things go in the community. This is council's document. They're the ones that get to interpret it. They're the ones that get to make changes to it. This isn't put forth by the province. This is council's document, and it's a guiding document on where things go. That being said, the subsequent, in the hierarchy of these documents, you can't have an ASP that conflicts with an MDP. The MDP is overarching. And then, so the second one we're talking about is an ASP adoption, and then below that is the land use bylaw amendment to actually give zoning to the parcels that we're talking about. So where does that leave us with Knights Crossing? We've gone into some of the abbreviations and acronyms and stuff already. The annexation was finalized on July the 1st, 2024. There had been, you know, Curtis talked a little bit. I'm not going to speak to some of the initial conversations that were had with the annexation, other than that the annexation itself had been on the town's radar for at least since 2009, 2008, probably earlier. This piece of land was an island unto itself. Previous to, you know, last year I worked for the county, so I was on the other side of the annexation. We knew it was on the town's radar for a long time. It's an island unto itself. It's on the other side of the highway. It's serviced by the town. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of question of where it probably fit better. The holdup to it previously being annexed was it would have likely been a contested annexation because the landowner didn't want it. And so the change when the landowner passed away, it facilitated that going forward. But it had been on the town's radar for a long time. We knew about it for quite a long time before. So this is where we're at. The last year and a half, we've been working with this developer to coordinate information. We've been working with the engineers. We've been working with the planners to see if this development would fit in this particular area. I think sometimes it's just because we work with them, we don't have a bias either way. Our job is to work with anybody who wants to bring a business to town or anything to town or residential, whatever, and say, does this work? At that point, we figure out if it does, and then we slide it off to council and say, this is the proposal, this is what you need to look at. So, like was mentioned at the beginning of October, the ASP, the MDP amendment, and the land use bylaw amendments were presented to council. And anyway, and that's kind of where this all kicked off, the beginning of October. So one of the questions that's frequently be asked is, this seems so sudden, where did this come from? Why did we know nothing about it before? I understand it completely. It does seem like, you know, it's farmer field one day, and the next thing we know, you know, we're picturing in our minds something much different. The challenge is that any business owner deserves to be heard on their final product or the final, you know, development that they want to do. It's not been sudden for us. And so all the things that we look at that matter, such as, you know, drainage, engineering, servicing, all those things have been churning in the background for the last year and a half, getting to the point where the final product or presentation of what the development is can be brought to the public, can be brought to council. So I understand the thoughts of it being sudden, but in some ways it almost has to be if it's being done right. So just briefly about the three different bylaw amendments and adoptions that are going on. The very first thing that is to be talked about, the first public hearing that will be heard is the amendment to the MDP. The Municipal Development Plan is the overarching guide that gives guidance to where things can be in the town. This particular parcel was county. It was zoned to urban fringe with the county. That zoning stayed attached after the annexation. And at this point, it still has it. It's not a town zoning, but it talks about in the MDP how to take a newly annexed piece of land, I think the wording is, it says, upon annexation, land may be designated to, and it says a land use district as defined in an approved area structure plan. So that's what this is. The area structure plan is giving the MDP guidance of what it, you know, is suggested to be. So that's the very first thing. Does this fit in kind of an overall plan? So what the MDP amendment is proposing, and I think you can see it on the sheets there, is a top portion that's parks and open space. That includes an area of the skate park, and it calls it the drainage pond in there, or storm pond as it's labeled. That particular area we're hoping to be multi-use. Council can make the decision on its final use. It's not a standing water pond. It's an area that when we get our big 50 and 100 year water flows, that it can take that water. In this case, the skate park has been on the town's radar for a long time. We've had user groups that have been looking for a spot. This has kind of been one of the good spots that we've identified for quite a while. So the first part of the MDP is looking at this parks and open space. The second would be looking at the commercial area, which you can see identified there. And then the third part, as identified, would be potential future residential. So these three different sections are basically, the MDP says these are all things that would be okay to do in this area. So once you've got an MDP through the series stages of readings, all these are dependent, so the ASP can't proceed unless the MDP is approved. And so there's a reason why we're doing them in this order. That's the way it has to be done. As far as, like, you know, the ordering of these, there's been some comments about why were they grouped, why were they not taken separately. You know, the standard that we've used at the town and many other municipalities use is if you separate these out, if you take an MDP amendment and you simply say, okay, we have an idea, it's conceptual, it's not anything, it's just conceptual, that we'd like to do some park and open space, some commercial, and some residential. If you leave it at that, you run the process through. If you have the downstream effect, in this case, Knights Crossing, you know, sitting under the desk, ready to go, and we don't talk about it, when we bring it the next week to the public and to council and say, oh, and by the way, this is exactly what we want to do, you know, in our view, this is a very clear decision. It's way more transparent to bring you the whole thing. If we had, you know, said, this is conceptual only, we'd make the changes, and then you bring the next portion to it, it would create reason for thinking there's not transparency. We wanted the public to see the whole package, upstream, all the way through the downstream process to see what was being proposed. So you work through the ASP approval, and then you go down to land use bylaw. The land use bylaw is the zoning part. The zoning is a little bit different than the MDP at the top. The zoning is for a section of parks and open space, commercial, and then actually the part that the MDP lists as future residential, it's being left as urban reserve. And urban reserve is simply a zoning that we give it that says this isn't firm, we don't know for sure, it's just an idea. The urban reserve area is common in most of our areas that have been annexed over the last 20 years. If it doesn't have anything particular going on right away. So hopefully that kind of gives you a really, really long and boring and horribly boring, I get it, explanation of the three different bylaws that are being proposed. Our proposal to council is going to be that the public hearings are all heard at once. If you don't do it that way, there's a challenge that if you come to the microphone and say, I'm really concerned about it, say a new grocery store in town, we have to, if we're only on the MDP amendment, you'd say, well, I'm sorry, that's not part of this. Please sit down. That'll be part of the ASP, but it's not part of this. And so by taking the public hearings all together, we can let everybody just express their views. If it fits into MDP and ASP, great. If it fits into any of the three, that's fine, you can hear it all. So that's the reason that we're recommending that the public hearings be held together. That way people can just express their opinions and not get hung up on which actual bylaw they're speaking to. So let's speak a little bit about the character of the actual development. I think most people I haven't had a whole lot of questions about the skate park. I haven't had a lot of questions. I've had a few about potential residential. Most people are concerned about the commercial portion. So the commercial portion, if you look at your handouts there, and this is all just part of the ASP, anybody can access it, includes several different components. One is a gas station with 2 fast food units attached of a total building size of 6,000 square feet. I really like to give people kind of perspectives on how much that is. So a 6,000 square foot building is about 2 town pumps stuck together. So within the space of 2 town pumps, you'd have 2 restaurants and a gas station, convenience store kind of setup. That's kind of the size that we're looking there. It has a 2,500 square foot grocery store, 25,000 square foot grocery store. Is about 2/3 of the size of the new grocery store in Cardston, or about half the size of the Safeway on the south side, just to give you some perspective on how big it is.
Say like building C, building D, building...
Yeah. So the grocery store is building D. Yeah, building D is listed at 25,000 square feet. And that would be the one that's about half the size of the Safeway on the south side in Lethbridge. Looking forward, it lists 2 retail service stores that are 11,400 square feet total. That's about the exact same size as the PharmaSave in Raymond on Broadway. So that's about 11,000 square feet. So that kind of gives you an idea of the total size there. And then the spec retail bays are 4,000 square feet listed here, and 4,000 square feet would be about 1.5 town pumps. So this just kind of gives you an idea of size-wise what they're talking about here. We talked a little bit about the skate park. There's the potential if council would like to look at using it as a dog park as well. If that's been previous council's potential. There's a chance to dual use that area as both drainage and as a dog park, but that'll be up to the new council to decide. As far as if you take a look at the south side of your map, there's a proposed road change. This was likely on the town's radar to be done anyway. That intersection where the golf course road meets, is it East Park, I think it is, where it meets that intersection there, it's awkward and wonky. It's kind of an awkward intersection to begin with. If you look how it's going to look now, it's going to be bent and just make a T intersection. That's been on our radar for a while to look at doing anyway. So that'll be in there. As far as actual exchange of land, there's 2 pieces that are looking to be exchanged between the town and the developer. We need a portion of their land to make this road bend like we want it to, and they need a portion of our land to match the entrance right across from the hospital. And so the parcel sizes are almost the same. They're kind of a wash in size, and they're just 2 small triangles that allow this to happen. So one of the things that I've been pretty clear with councils as I've worked with them over the years is the question then a lot of people have is, okay, so now we're going to go to a public hearing. At the end of the public hearing, they have options to close it, or they have an option to adjourn it, keep it open, and set another date. During that time, they can receive more information. They can choose to move to second reading if they choose. They can choose to do third reading all in one night. That's up to them. They could do a second reading and then postpone third for another time. They have the flexibility to do that. So after the public hearing is closed, They still have opportunities to, they're not bound that night to make any kind of a decision at all. They can keep things open how they choose to do so. So one of the things that I get asked quite often is, okay, so what is council actually going to make this decision based on? So in another, role that I occupy, I'm a member of an appeal board that sits on development appeals throughout Southern Alberta on communities. So if a development, say, gets denied for something and they appeal it, I'm the one, one of a group of people that will go sit on that appeal board and hear things. So one of the things that people sometimes have misunderstandings on are like, what are we actually looking at? Like, what makes this a good development? What is the town looking at? What's council going to use as decisions to make their decisions? So I'll go through a list of things that, I've talked to councils in the past about and what, they can use as decisions or should be using for decisions. The first thing that they look at is the statutory documents. So you're going to look at your municipal development plan, your land use bylaw, your MGA to see, does this thing actually match with what we've got in our statutory documents? In this particular case, the MGA, and I'll speak a little bit, or sorry, not the MGA, the MDP, the Municipal Development Plan, speaks about, some important things that are going to be kind of the foundation of what, this decision might be based on. In this case, the MDP outlays a goal or a desire to have, a special area of the downtown, a protection for the downtown. Some of the things that my job is at this point, when it gets to this point, we receive all the public comment, my job is to take these statutory documents and present both sides that say, hey, this lines up with the development, this doesn't line up with the development, and then council gets to sort out how to prioritize what they're reading, what they're understanding. So at this point, one of the big things that might be part of the discussion and that I'll present to them is how does the MDP actually work with this development. So and this is not an extensive list by any means. You've got things like page 27, quote, balancing these goals with the desires of residents results in policies for maintaining a centralized downtown. Rigorously retaining small-scale neighborhood commercial nodes to protect the downtown and ensure compatibility with uses. Page 27, maintaining a distinct downtown core for commercial and civic activities. Page 28, small-scale neighborhood commercial developments may be considered where there is an identifiable need and evidence that the use will have a limited impact on the viability of the commercial core and are compatible with surrounding neighborhoods. And then page 30, the town and community continue to encourage and support local business. So one of the things that I'll present to council is these guiding principles that say, hey, listen, previous councils have said that the downtown is important. We want you to be aware of that, recognize it, that this is written into your MDP, it's important. And so they'll look at that, they'll make a decision. You have also, and I'll be perfectly honest, this is like most important decisions, you have friction. Statutory documents like the MDP sometimes will have multiple goals that may seem counterintuitive and may go against each other. In this case, they do as well. So you have things like page 1, where it says policies are to provide opportunity, choice for housing, recreation, services, and employment. Page 15, the town will continue to regularly monitor development and land supply and may consider annexation when it becomes apparent that private land within the town will not become available in the foreseeable future. Page 26, commercial activity in residential neighborhoods will be generally limited to home occupations subject to the requirements of the land use bylaw. So in one of the things that we look at, we go, okay, so I think there's in our office, a fairly high consensus that there isn't a lot of available developable land left in our downtown. We've had, over the last time that I've been there, at least 1.5 years, and I know previously to that, we've had potential developers come to us and say, we'd love to be in the downtown with our business. Can you help us find a spot? We've worked with one developer, we worked for over 1.5 years to try to find him a spot. We worked with existing landowners, and it didn't work. They ended up not being in the downtown core. Luckily, they were able to find a spot that worked in town. But this isn't unique to just one or two cases. We quite often have people coming looking to be in the downtown, and it's a hard situation right now to find any space. It's not that it's a bad thing, it just means since 2009 that we've been able to fill some of those holes. We've been able to have, a dental clinic, a Pizza Hut, a hardware store, all those things pop up, and so the available space now is limited. The town doesn't own any more commercial land in the downtown. And so when we talk about, like in this particular case, what is available for downtown, for commercial, for development, that's one of the considerations council has to take in. Page 27, the retention and diversification of business and industry in Raymond is sought to create more local employment opportunities, more service opportunities, and a more balanced assessment base. This has been brought up by our CFO in recent meetings. We're a pretty lopsided community, and that's part of our nature, being next to Lethbridge and being a bedroom community. But that's one of the things it talks about. There's other friend. I'll present all these to council. I'll find everything that seems applicable, present it to them. So what we have is, in this case, an MDP that has friction with itself. There's parts of it that say protect the downtown, and there's parts that say we want more economic and commercial growth. And if you reach a stage where the downtown can't accept it, then council has to make a decision of, do we go somewhere else and allow it? So that might be one of the considerations that it is one of the considerations that council will have to take into account. Other planning considerations, servicing. We've spent quite a bit of time with our engineers looking at, do we have issues with water? Do we have issues with sewer? Do we have issues with drainage and storm sewer? To try to find a good spot to see if this would even work. The reports that have come back from our engineers that basically this is one of the best spots in town for something like this. Our water supply, what we have for potable water, is great in this area. The sewer capacity doesn't have any concerns. Included with my package to council will be a report from the engineer. And then the drainage solution that we're looking at, where the water will go up into that storm pond and gets pushed out down east down through the edge of the golf course and down through the coulee. It doesn't take use of our storm system. There was a storm system that was put in by VSP and it goes out by the golf course. It's not using that. So servicing is a big deal. The other big, one of the other big things you look at is traffic. What does the traffic look like in the area? Previous to, I think it was completed in 2024, a traffic impact assessment was done by the owners of the land, and that traffic impact assessment was presented to us. It was presented to Alberta Transportation, and comments were received. It's included as part of this package of information. We call it the TIA, the Traffic Impact Assessment. Didn't identify any major concerns. So these TIAs are done by engineers that do this for a living. They come and they count flows of cars. They look at the potential commercial development, how many parking spots, and they make an assessment of whether or not it's feasible or not. So we've submitted these to transportation, and they don't have any concerns. They've approved it. And so we look at traffic. It's important, and it's part of the feedback that council has to review as well. Another thing we look at is the impact on neighboring land uses. If you're going to put something big like this somewhere, what kind of impact is it going to have on the neighboring, in most cases, residential neighborhoods? It's an important thing to look at. How this meshes with its surrounding neighborhood. In lots of ways, this is a really good spot. It has very limited nearby residential. You've got VSP, you've got the golf course on one side, VSP and the hospital on the other. We've submitted comments to AHS for their review, for their thoughts. They've come back with no concerns. And so part of our consultation process is we send these out to agencies for review. And in this case, one of the considerations council will have is how does this fit with the neighboring land uses? Okay, so overall, the MDP and some of these statutory documents, especially the MDP, have to look out extended years as well. So they're going to be looking out, 20, 30 years. And one of the questions that will come up for council to decide is, okay, if commercial is not what we want here, then what? The developer will have a right to develop their land. We can't basically tell the developer you're going to sit on it for 30 years until we need it, and then you can't do anything with it. That's not reasonable. And so if not this, then what? That's an answer for council to look at, not in this application, but in the future. So some of the things that also that come up with considerations are things that are not planning considerations. There's two types of considerations when you look at things like this. There's planning considerations, and then there's consumer choice considerations. Probably the biggest consideration that isn't a planning consideration is the character of the applicant. You know, where are they from? Where is their headquarters? You know, some of the other things like where will the money flow to? Who will they hire? What is the ethnicity of who they hire? Those aren't planning considerations. A person can choose to make consumer considerations based on those things. If we can't write it into our statutory documents, like we couldn't write into our statutory documents, we will only take applications from people within 50 kilometers of Raymond. We can't do that, and so because we can't do that, we can't use it as a planning consideration, or that we shouldn't use it. Councils, and I should say this very openly, councils are free to make whatever decisions they want, whatever considerations they want to use. Other things include such things as the history of previous developments. There's been some questions about this particular developer on, you know, who are they, what is their history? Those aren't things that we consider. What is, you know, we don't take in consideration anybody's bank account before they make an application. If it's a house builder, we don't go and inspect their previous homes. We just look at the application for the use that it is and not who that it is. Another big one that isn't a planning consideration is business viability. You know, there's been several comments that were received about, for example, you know, we don't need 3 of whatever business it is in town. You know, the only person who gets to decide in the planning world if the business is viable or not is the business owner. It's not the job of administration or council to making a decision whether or not the business is viable or not. Nobody would want that. And so considerations of, you know, we need, you know, when we get comments that say X amount of people need to live here first, or we already have X number of these businesses, we don't need any more. They're not a planning consideration in that the only person who fairly should get to make that call is the business owner. Somebody could come and say, I have a great idea to put in an exotic car rental in Raymond. And I would say, in my mind, I'm going to think that's a horrible business idea. But they're the ones to get to make that call. And if they have, you know, if they fit all the criteria to do it, they get to make that decision. So business viability is another big thing. And then one of the interesting things that is going to be part of this discussion is competition. The province looks at this in different ways. Competition, their specific wording in their manuals is competition will not be a relevant planning consideration. That being said, there's a little bit of a difference in this. The MDP, where it carves out special considerations for downtown, can consider the effect of a new business or a new area on that downtown core. They can take that into account. Separately, it's a fine line to walk, because separately, competition in itself, you know, if a business comes to town and it's not a downtown consideration, if a business comes to town and say, I'd like to do this, I can't tell them, sorry, we have one of those already. You know, we're not going to take your application. So in this case, competition on itself isn't a consideration, but it can be as a whole when the downtown is mentioned in the MDP, which it is. So that will be one of the things that council considers. Some of the other things that aren't planning considerations, but are very, very much, and I want to stress this, very, very much consumer considerations, is the contributions to the local community that they make. I love our local businesses that do so much for the community. I I can't base my applications on, or reject somebody's application on if I think they're going to do less for the community. It's not a planning consideration. They can choose to do as much or little of that as they want. Another one is, and this is kind of the final one that I'll speak to, is a subjective or emotive opinion. One of the ones that I've heard lots is it'll change the feel of our town. That's a very valid concern. It very well could, in many people's minds, change the feel. But for us to use that as a planning consideration, it's hard, it's emotive and subjective, and it's hard for us to receive. Anyway, I hope I didn't bore you half to death. This is a world that I live in, and it's hard sometimes for people to understand it, but I'm looking forward to your questions, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of guidance on the process, what happened, and anyway, I'll turn it back to Curtis.
Yeah, excuse me, I'll just mention a couple more comments after listening to Tyler that I forgot to mention earlier. So when our municipal development plan was passed in 2009, council did do public consultation, and in the documentation that is available, there was approximately just under 300 responses. I believe over 220 of them were either strongly in favor or somewhat in favor of further commercial growth. Now, this was in 2009. One of the things that they said, though, was a variety store, another grocery store, and a couple of other things. So why we were okay to proceed to this path is because the applications that are received fit the MDP based on the feedback that council approved, and we have been given as kind of foundation to build upon. Tyler mentioned planning considerations, that these are all these planning considerations that need to be used for making a decision. He did say, though, that council can choose to use other considerations, which they can, but if they do use non-planning related considerations, the likelihood of a successful appeal goes up, right? And so, because that isn't typically what holds as much merit.
And I will point out, just on this particular case, we have the 3 bylaws going on right now. There's MDP, ASP, and land use bylaw. Behind that, there's still more process. There's subdivision, and then the actual development permits for the buildings themselves and the facility. Subdivisions and development permits have formal appeal boards that hear them. The MDP itself, changes to the MDP are not appealable. It's council's prerogative to do with that MDP as they choose. What Curtis is getting at is basically, there's judicial reviews that are possible if somebody's felt that they haven't been felt with, like if the process isn't fair, if there's, massive areas of procedural, lacking, or if, in the case of either, the applicant or somebody who's opposed to it, if they feel that the reasons that they've used are way out of left field that aren't anything to do with planning reasons, there is the opportunity to go to judicial review. It's not frequently done because unlike subdivision and development permits where there's boards already set up to do it, this one happens, the province basically says, hey, listen, that MDP is up for you guys to decide, and how to interpret it is up to you. And so just so that you know, in this case with the MDP, the first of those 3, it's not appealable, the others are.
And the last thing I'll just say, this just came to my attention today, and we just want to squash any potential rumors before they start. Within the next week or 2, town crews will be moving a bunch of earth material from a road that we're currently working on, and we will be excavating and piling some of this on the northwest corner of this parcel. This does not mean that this has been approved. This does not mean that this is leading anyone down a path. That area is where the skate park's going to be, and it needs to be built up. So we don't want to move the stuff twice. So I'm trying to just get ahead of this ahead of time. I've directed the staff that we will publicly announce this as much as possible. Please tell everybody when earth starts moving on the northwest corner of that parcel, it's on the land that we own. It's where the skate park will go. It does need to be built up. We're going to move the earth once instead of twice. And so I just want to, we'll advertise that again on our social media and our website, and please spread the word. That is not an indication that we're preempting a decision, that a decision's already been made. It's just being efficient with our time. So I think we've covered things on our end. I'm sure there's questions. Please, if you do, just kind of line up on either side. We'll do our best to answer them, and appreciate your patience.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. So just looking at this, I'm just wondering how much consideration's been made for this property to be used for seniors housing? Because it seems like maybe it might be a better use. It's close to the hospital for emergent care, so it could save lives. It's close to the walking paths and sports field for quality of life, and would encourage freeing up space for young families in the town, which would help justify our high school, which I understand that we have a declining student population. And it would also help seniors have a few more options in Raymond, keep them here, and keep them and their valuable insights here, rather than having to be shipped off somewhere else. So just was my first thought when I was looking at this.
So the town currently isn't in the development business. We don't initiate our own developments. We wait for applicants to submit them to us. And so would we love as the town to have somebody submit to, what's that, sorry? Anyway.
Yeah, please be respectful.
We would love to have an applicant bring something forward with seniors housing. It would be fantastic. We've been waiting for a long time. We'd love it. And we do everything that we can to try to help facilitate that. In this case, there was a private developer who's brought forward an idea. It's actually listed as one of the things that isn't a development consideration is, alternatives. Alternatives are great, but, if the thing meets the thing, if it meets the plan that's there, if there's no, if we haven't received a seniors housing or other thing, of course you can look at it at that time at the MDP stage. But at this point, because we're not in the development business and we're waiting on people to apply for developments, this is what we have that's been applied for. And
yeah, and I think I'd just say as well on that, when we look at the land map of Raymond, we do have residential developments that's happening. We do have Aspen Point, which is a seniors type based development that is on the south end of town. If we decide that this isn't suited for commercial, which council very well could, the question then would be, okay, well, where else would work for commercial? There will be, on the other adjacent parcels, there will be more abrupt conflict with existing residential houses. The infrastructure may not be as good. The access to highway frontage commercial, which is a very standard, common practice when attracting commercial, you want to have access to traffic as possible. That is the best location. So if we're going to say that that's not for commercial, that's fine. We need to find where else commercial will fit, or we need to just accept that we're not open for commercial unless we can fit it in the existing space. And that's definitely open for council to consider. Administratively, based upon the direction that we've been given from council, that doesn't fit the direction. However, that can change with the new council. We do have a lot of infill area already that is better suited for residential versus commercial. All of the other places in and around Victoria Sports Park on the south end of town, those are also suited for residential development. And so finding that balance is the thread that council's going to have to try to figure out. And we will definitely support them in whatever decision they make. So please, again, this is why we're having this meeting. This is why we have a public hearing on Monday. Feel free to provide your input one way or the other, because council will be using that to help them make their decision. But they are looking from a 20 to 30 year time frame, and they're trying to look what's best for the corporate organization of the municipality or its long-term opportunities. And how they interpret that may be open for discretion. They may agree, they may disagree, and that's why we've elected them. And so it's a difficult position to be in. Whatever decision they make, for or against, I'd ask you to show them grace, because in any decision, not everyone's going to be happy with any decisions that's made. But I appreciate the people who volunteer to put themselves up for council, and I do feel we are blessed to have a number of good councils over the last number of years. So,
Jordan.
Thank you, Curtis. Tyler, I've really appreciated your comments and your explanations so far. If I may, I have a question and a follow-up that piggybacks on Travis's question. So you had mentioned earlier that you had already looked into with engineering, the costs, the infrastructure. Do you have, or can you give us any sort of idea of what type of investment would be required to bring this type of development that's being proposed to fruition? Any ballpark dollar amount of what type of investment would be required for that?
So town investment-wise, we're pretty clear with our developers, both residential and commercial, that we keep our off-site levies super, super low. Instead of charging tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in off-site levies that we would collect, we basically say servicing is up to you. So the mains that are involved, like the sewer main that runs along the golf course road and then over past VSP, is well within capacity. This will be part of the reports as well, but if you were to fill out all of Stonegate and you were to fill out all the, like, say that residential went in east of the new high school, if you were to fill both those out and with residential proposed and the shopping center, we'd at that point be about at the limit of our 10-inch line that's in there. We're looking 15, 20 years out, possibly. And it wouldn't be the shopping center that would put the strain on the services on the mains.
It's residential growth.
It would be the larger hundreds of houses of residential that would do it. As far as water, it's all there. The costs that, right now that we're looking at the town taking are things that we were going to do anyway. The straightening of that road was always on the docket. There was always a plan to take a sidewalk from like high school VSP along the west side of that property and match the trail up there. Those are the kind of things the town is looking at. Other than that, in this particular case, there isn't a whole lot of cost to the town.
And the developer would eat that cost.
Well, to connect to the mains, all those things, that's the developer's cost.
Right, and it takes significant investment for a developer to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, so
Perfect.
in this case, as far as town contribution, and we've done this before, is they need a place for water to flow, and this is common in Raymond. We have drainage issues all over the place. Where do we get water to go? It's gotten better with the South Drain project, but in this case, they needed a place for the water to go. We had a piece of land that was sitting there as grass, not being used for a whole lot. If we can dual purpose it and make it work for drainage and for, say, a dog park in the future, great. But in this particular case, the outlay of funds from the town to make this happen is very, very low. And it was, in most cases, things we were planning on doing anyway.
And we don't have a number from the developer, but it would be, to build the buildings and put in the infrastructure for the parking and everything, it would be tens of millions.
Thank you, Curtis. And so to continue where Travis left off, in the event that this proposed Knights Crossings development is defeated for one reason or another, can you, without breaching any sort of confidence, tell us, do you have any other investors, anybody with deep pockets that might be able to bring in some sort of development that would better suit public opinion, such as seniors housing or boutique shops? Has there been anything that's brought forward? Or if this gets defeated, does it just stay as farmland?
Because the land is privately owned, I can't speak to what conversations they've had to sell it and have somebody make another application. I don't know. Do we have anybody right now in the wings that's talking about doing a large-scale seniors housing, or, there's been a few people discuss it, but filling it out with, say, half seniors housing and half residential on this particular parcel, I haven't been any part of any conversations where this parcel's been discussed.
Yeah, there's groups that we do meet with, that we are meeting with about various opportunities. Again, I won't go into details about them at this time, but since it is privately owned, we can't prejudge what they will do. I will say, though, that there has been comment that we just don't want the grocery store. We're okay with everything else. We can't deny a commercial application based on a use, like a business within that use, on the hopes that another group will come in with a better selection of commercial stores that may suit the public's need better. And so that's where it's kind of a all or nothing question. Is this parcel suitable for commercial use or not? And that is subjective, that council will have to decide.
Thank you for the articulate response.
Yes, please.
Okay, I appreciate you taking my question. My wife and I were in the Medlark Manor. Excuse me, the Miracle Manor. I don't know where I live. Okay, I'm 82 years old. I understand there are some senior housing being built now. I can't afford to go and spend 400,000 or whatever it is on one of these houses. We have our name put in at the lodge up there, and we've had it in for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and we'll probably be dead before we can get in. They take people from out of, they're taking people from BC and around instead of taking some locals. And this isn't fair for us that live here, and somebody else from some other province can come in
Okay.
and go in there. And I understand that they have another wing that could be built, but I don't know if the government's going to help or what, but we need senior housing that people like us can go in and get extra help and not have to worry about a big mortgage on a house and that.
No, that's fair. No, I appreciate the question. So
Thank you.
Rich Country Housing is our seniors housing authority that the town of Raymond, the county of Warner, the village of Sterling, the village of Warner, and the town of Elk River, and the village of Coots all contribute money to. So on your tax bill, there's a municipal tax, there's an education tax, and then there's a line for Rich Country Housing. It's a very small amount on your tax bill, but it is there. That's the amount that goes to help support the seniors housing. That lodge was built and I believe completed in 2017. It was just over $10 million. There is an ability to do a 10-unit expansion on the north wing of that parcel, and we are working with the province and with Rich Country Housing to try and get that. Right now, the province's position is municipalities can pay for a third, the housing authority can pay for a third, and the province will chip in a third when you get to that point in the process.
I understand there's one in Warner, there's one in Elk River, and we want to go down there.
No, and that's fair. So we are trying to, just publicly, municipality is trying to find ways to get that funding higher up the list. Our contention is when George Bonney was the mayor, he sat on a provincial board that represented housing authorities, seniors housing authorities, and he was able to get the government to change the legislation so that that entire $10 million lodge was funded by the province. We are hopeful that something like that could be enacted for this expansion because, in effect, if it's not, the municipality is paying for it because we have to pay our third, the town of Raymond, all of you out of taxes or out of grants that could go to other things. The Seniors Housing Board, which is made up of the town of Raymond residents, would have to pay for another third, so we'd be getting hit a second time, and then the province. So we're trying to work with Rich Country Housing, we're trying to work with the Good Samaritan Society to see if they're willing to do an expansion on the 2 acres of land they hold south as well. And we're trying to look for other opportunities, but again, we're not the provider, and so if we can't attract a provider, it's difficult. I can't speak for why the process that Rich Country has to who they don't allow in the queue and in the wait list, and I believe it's over 50. So I hear what you're saying, and we are aware of that. But it's a complicated issue that I don't really know if we can address easily or at this point. But it is something when we go up in a couple of weeks' time, council, myself, and a couple of other staff members will be going to the Alberta Municipalities Convention in Calgary, where the ministers and the premier and everyone will be there, and we do have time to speak with. And that is one of the things that we are trying to lobby on behalf, that the province needs to change how those funding structures are. But that's really all I can say at the moment. So I apologize that it's delaying, but I do know there's availability in Elk River. So if you are looking for something, there is space there, and they'd love to welcome you, but we'd love to keep you here, so. Hi, Ron.
Hey, thanks for your making yourself available and for the information. 30 years ago, I started a business, and my business goes from Winnipeg out to Houston, BC. And everywhere in between, and most of my business takes place in rural Canada, Western Canada. So for over these past 30 years, I've drove through probably more small communities than 99% of the population. And what I've noticed is that there's not very many main streets that aren't shuttered up. And this is of major concern to me. And I see why they're shuttered up, as it started slowly, these big box things come in, and all of a sudden everything is focused out there. And what made me quite encouraged at this meeting here was, Tyler, with your information that the town council controls the MDP.
Correct.
That they don't need a real excuse because the NDP says what you mentioned about the downtown core and how there's it's quite high on priority in that one part of the MDP. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right, is that town council can say, we're not going to make this development. We can make another commercial development, smaller or whatever, but we don't have to allow this type of commercial development to come in. Because what I've seen over the past 30 years, it started slowly and now it's almost every little town. So is that correct, that with the MDP that they...
Yeah. I'm never going to put words in council's mouth about what they can and can't do. That's not my role. The MDP is council's document. They have the ability to interpret it as they would. They have definite goals that talk about, protection of the downtown and the businesses therein. They have definite goals that talk about commercial growth. Both are in there. Mm-hmm. And this is where the friction is for sure. Could you have a town council that says we're done with commercial in Raymond? In essence, we're kind of there already.
But that's not my question.
Well, no, I know, but I'm just saying, could you go to that one level of it? Could you take it all the way and say, all the commercially zoned land in Raymond right now is as far as we're going to go? They could go to that extent, or anywhere in between. That's their prerogative to choose. So yes, it's their decision, and they could make a range of decisions on scope and scale of what they do. That being said, if they're going to make a decision on a different location or a different size or those kind of things, should it fall within reasonable planning decisions? Yeah, it should. There should be a good reason for saying this potential piece on the highway isn't good, and if you're going to pick someplace else, why is that better? Yes, they have full range of control over it, if that answers your question.
That answers it, because I've heard, and I'm sure you guys have heard too. If I've heard it, everybody's heard it.
Right.
But it sounds like there's too much talk out there that council is not able to make these decisions. But from what I get from this meeting, and I wasn't going to come, but I'm glad I did because of this, is that town council has...
I've heard that rumor as well. No, this is their decision.
Okay.
Absolutely their decision to make.
Good. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Hey, Matt.
Hello.
Thanks for putting on this informational session. I've really enjoyed it. I thought it was really informative. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't know how many questions I can ask. I don't really want to take up more time than I should. But before I ask any question, I was just wondering if we could address the C1 commercial zoning and then direct control. I think that with the C1 zoning, there's permitted uses and then there's discretionary uses, right? And a grocery store, for example, falls under the list of discretionary uses. and I'm just bringing that up as a clarification, because I believe earlier it was mentioned that they can't say whether or not there can be a grocery store there. If it's zoned commercial, it's zoned commercial. And I just don't believe that that's accurate.
I can respond to that if you'd like.
Please.
So once you get into the land use bylaw section of it, where you're talking about C1, where it lists those discretionary uses, then we've left the realm of MDP. We're past MDP, we're past subdivision, and now we're into actual development permits. You know, once you're to that point and you're looking at the grocery store as a discretionary use, then you're solely into the world of, you know, we're beyond conceptual. We're looking at what are the planning reasons for not allowing it. If the reason at that point is, you know, if it's competition based, like I said, then you're past that, you know, protection of the MDP, if that makes sense. Like the MDP overarches it, yes. But at that point, if you're going to pick out, like if you're going to say 6 of the businesses are good, but this one isn't, it becomes a hard decision to defend in an appeal hearing, like an appeal board hearing, where you say all these other things are good, but this one isn't, and it's because of competition. That's harder to defend. So at the MDP stage where you can shape it and form it, that's where that applies more. But definitely, I understand what you're saying, it's discretionary. Most of the time when you get those kind of questions, or why is it discretionary to begin with, it's because of, well, what is it going to do to the neighbors? You know, is it right next to a whole bunch of residential? Does its parking lot shine its lights into, you know, those are the kind of things that you consider. As long as the discretionary reason that they would look at it follows planning reasons, then absolutely that's where they would consider it, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that there's, although it's subtle, a difference between assessing business viability and competition concerns as compared to assessing the impact that something will have on, like, the downtown core, for example, yep. Right? And whereas the latter is something that could be considered, is what I meant to say. Is that correct?
Sorry, you're going to have to rephrase that.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I was just saying that they may seem similar, but I think there's an important difference between considering business viability and interfering with business competition, and considering the impact that something will have on the downtown core, as an example, right? Would you agree with that?
So your argument would be that at the point of at the discretionary development permit stage, if a council were to look at it and say this particular one business in the commercial is, you know, affects another one in the downtown, that would be a reason to...
No, not a particular business, just the area as a whole.
Like,
I'm not saying that this would be the case. Yeah. I'm just exploring how the process works.
I think
right?
there's a fine line that council can walk, that it's not competition, but it's density, or there's some concerns that you could say that will have a negative impact potentially.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
The challenge, though, is that it's somewhat subjective, mm-hmm. and there's subjective arguments that could say that it does help, right? And so it's trying to find the way for council has to take that on the balance and determine what they feel is in the best interest, and that is subjective as well, but it's based on their decision.
And I would say this, our office is, you know, one of the questions that's been asked is like, well, what is the planning department or administration's recommendation going to be? Like, if the question is, have we given council some kind of guidance that says everything's going to be okay downtown, don't worry about it? Absolutely not. We haven't done that, and we won't. That's not our role. We're not in the business of speculating what the particular impacts are going to be on each business in the downtown. In fact, like, that's the kind of the last thing that we want to do is make speculation on what happens to, you know, a Subway or a pharmacy or a grocery store in the downtown if this goes in. We're not experts, And we don't give that recommendation, if that makes sense. You know, obviously there's data that shows big box stores have negative effects on downtowns. Absolutely. That being said, there's a ton of variability in the effects on the communities and what they do. But it's not our role to make a guess as to what, you know, Knights Crossings will do to the downtown. We leave that up to, I know there's been some talk about economic impact, you know, assessments done. When we talk to our planners about it, like I said, the one that we use has been doing this for 28 years in southern Alberta, and she said this isn't a tool that's used here. We've talked to peer communities, they haven't used them. Curtis can speak to a conversation that he had with one of these companies that provides them.
We had a group that we used that came in a few years ago that did some work with us, and they do these, but they're usually for like St. Louis or, you know, large urban centers. And I said, listen, we're having this proposed development. We're curious about what the impact will be, if that's even something we can quantify. People are saying you need to do these economic impact assessments. What is your recommendation? And because we have a good relationship with them, he said, honestly, I'd love to take your money, but the data that's out there is not for small towns, it's large urban centers. And so we're going to take that data, we're going to make extrapolated guesses, and we're going to charge you tens of thousands of dollars. And he says, we'll take your money, but it's not relevant because there is no data for rural Alberta that they can draw from. And so that, and kind of going to the point, you know, big box stores have negative impact. There's studies that specify that, but when you read into the studies, it's a Walmart supercenter, right? Or it's on a scale that isn't the same. And so to make that direct correlation isn't necessarily wise either. It very well could be, but it very well couldn't be either. And we can't come with it will be or it won't be. It's just council, here's information for you to consider. How does that fit in the Raymond context? That's where you decide.
In the end, our position is the best people to make this decision is the people who live here. The council that knows the people, the shopping habits, the best. And so we're not waiting and giving an opinion either way. That's for them to kind of work out. So.
And along that same vein, I guess, has the idea of a direct control zoning been discussed? It's my understanding that that kind of zoning could provide a lot more nuance into how the council is able to manage what's able to be done there, right? So whether it's putting in senior housing or saying, hey, we want a certain area here reserved for senior housing for some time in the future, whoever wants to facilitate that, or we think that many of these things that are proposed are great, except maybe not this one. That would perhaps give them the ability to have that kind of input. Has that been considered?
Yeah, the application of direct control in a municipality is generally driven by the applicant.
Okay.
If they have a development that they want to do that doesn't fit within the existing land use bylaw, you know, maybe they want to have lots that are smaller than our minimums, or it's usually driven by the applicant, and they say, okay, this doesn't work. We'd like council to make it, you know, DC. They come with their proposals of what they would like, and at that point, you're right. Council can say this doesn't fit our normal land use bylaw. We want it to be unique. There's definitely pluses or minuses to doing it. Direct control is very hard to change once you've locked it in. But it's usually driven on the developer's end. And in this case, the developer didn't come to us with any reason that they wanted it. They can make their development work within the existing land use categories of commercial, you know, and I don't know of any occasion where we've gone in and said, we'd like to, you know, this is what you want to do. We'd like to, you know, input our own DC into your plan, if that makes sense.
Right. Is it possible to be done, and it's just not usually done, or is it?
Yeah.
It runs the, I mean, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to run the risk of cherry picking an outcome that there's already zoning for a commercial zone, and that's where this would fit. It's very much a commercial use. It's either in the permitted or the discretionary options, and so I think it would be problematic to try and say that we're going to.
I'm not saying it's never been done anywhere, but I'm not aware of a place, definitely within Raymond, where we've taken an application from a developer and stuck in our own DCs. I'm not aware. Could it be? Sure, I don't know. But it's usually developer driven to accomplish a goal that they have. And in this case, it fit within the existing.
Yeah, I believe we have 2 direct control zones right now in Raymond. One is Aspen Point. It's a seniors development, and it had specific nuances. And then it's Eden's Restaurant, because it was a restaurant in a residential home in the middle of a residential district, not adjacent to a commercial sector. And so when you're talking about hours of operation and things of that nature, there was a desire to have a bit more control there. But that's more specific, not a broad assessment based on a broad application, if that makes sense. So.
Okay, so in those instances, were they requested by the property owner?
I believe.
I wasn't in on the negotiations of the one.
I don't know.
I know that I would say probably yes from what I've read, and I could be corrected. If you look at the actual inside the land use bylaw, it's got the Aspen Point direct control considerations, and it has all the lot sizes listed. It has fencing specifications. It has a bunch of things that are not necessarily the same as the rest of the town's land use bylaw. And I think, and I'm going to imagine this is the case, and I'd be surprised if it was otherwise. They came to the municipality. They said, this is what we'd like to do. It doesn't fit. The municipality sat down with their planners, with the developer, and said, well, to make this fit, you're going to have to go DC. And then they came up with an approval that way. That's usually how it works. It's not, like I said, we're not in the development business, and so usually it's somebody coming to us with a plan and saying, how does this fit, rather than us, But I can't speak, affirmative one way or the other. I wasn't involved with it, but yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Are you okay if we move on to Wayne, or do you have one more question? Or?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'm okay to move on. I guess the last thing is relevant to the fact that I have a lot of questions. With us only having 5 minutes to make a presentation addressing 3 different bylaws, I'm concerned that the time is insufficient, because this is obviously a complex issue. And the things that affect one bylaw may not be strictly relevant to the next, right? No. And so is there any way that we can mitigate that?
So our procedural bylaw spells out 5 minutes for delegations on public hearings, and that's where you have the opportunity to write written submissions that can be 1 to 45 pages long, if you like, going over your concerns that are, if they're more complex than what you can articulate. What we'd encourage you to do is make a written submission, and then when you have your 5 minutes, articulate the highlights. Council will get all those documents, and they'll have the ability to review them all, and then that's the data that they'll be using to make their decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So did you say the MDA, it's going to be changed, right?
There's a proposal to amend the sketch, the map 1 of the municipal development plan. Yes, the MDP.
Okay. And then why isn't, like you said, that's just going through no matter what?
No, that's the crux of the discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So between my wife and my son and me, we went like door to door with those. Tyler's got over 100 letters from me so far.
My email box is full. So.
I got another 100 to send you.
Okay,
anyway.
Great.
So out of approximately 110 people we've spoken with, 3 are definitely for it, for the Knights Crossing. 6 were initially, I don't know, I'm not for it, I'm not sure. But then 3 of those 6 have brought signed letters to the pharmacy.
Yep.
So, I mean, unless there's some crazy statistical anomaly, 92% of residents of Raymond are against this.
you know,
Yeah.
is it, I would think that when you submit your letters, you know, absolutely. You know, in the end, it's council's decision. They can interpret what comes into them as they will see fit. And so,
So the letters don't matter?
no, they do, of course. Oh, of course, yeah, yeah. No,
But
they
yeah,
get,
come up to the mic, Sue.
yeah, of course they matter. Like, that's the whole point of us taking them. If you get a response from me at 11:30 at night, it's because I'm processing the letters. And anyway, absolutely, they'll
Yeah.
be,
So
they'll
this
be in the
wasn't like
package.
we were like cherry picking people, we just went. So,
Great.
some of you people know about this, but
Yeah.
a committee separated the town in I don't know how many different areas, and then we volunteered, okay, I'll go. So we just went house to house to house to house to house to house, like you can't get any more random.
Right.
So, I sent you this thing I found on the internet today, I'll just read
Yep.
it to you guys. It's possible for a bylaw to go to plebiscite, public vote after it's passed first reading, particularly within the Canadian municipal context. This is often a result of a petition from electors. So there's three choices of how a plebiscite can start. One can be council initiated, the other can be elector initiated. But I think from the letters we've sent in, I think the council should initiate this. Like, if it looks like 90-some% of people are opposed to it, and we just elected this council by majority,
So your comments towards, you know, having a plebiscite, I would encourage you, the big, ugly, long, boring one, the MGA, there's a section in there. If you go to section 231 sub 1, it specifies, it says, except for a bylaw under section 22, which is road closures, and 15.1, or a bylaw or resolution under part 17, these are the exceptions. That if it's under part 17, if it's a development thing, it's not.
Subject to a plebiscite.
It's not subject to a plebiscite. So
and
yes,
what about amending the MDA? or
the MDP falls under part 17.
So it's a planning document that would fall under the Part 17. So that's one of the three exceptions where plebiscite rules don't apply.
What about the other two amendments?
Road closures and regional services commissions.
You mean like the ASP? And both are 17s. They're all 17s. So I'm going to say this specifically. I'm not a lawyer, but this comment about look at section 231 sub 1 in the MGA came from our lawyer. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff. I don't know what, you know, particular parameters you fed into your query about.
I just like right there what it's at the very top.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have a plebiscite
Now,
after
if it's a
first
bylaw,
reading.
if it's like like I was talking about before, if it's a noise bylaw and you're frustrated about
Yeah, well,
time
no,
like that,
no,
or it's
yeah,
user
we're
fees and
not here
charges,
for that.
all of that is plebiscite based.
Those are
100%.
non-17s, in which, yeah, absolutely, you could, but, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then the rest of my comments are all. Okay.
Okay,
No.
thanks.
No, thanks, Wayne. Hello.
Hello, I'm Gerald Lee.
Hi, Gerald.
And as I look at this, and I need your input, by the way, you did a fantastic job sharing. I really appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
I guess the only thing I would add to that is it would have been nice to have it about a week or two earlier so that a person doesn't get off track on things. But anyway, that's my comment. And also, it's so close to when the decision is being made, there's a lack of time to process what one might respond to. But having said that, when I look at this, the part with the housing that's there, when I went to the meeting, the developer said, well, that's for our housing. But we haven't decided what housing we want, but we own the land. Is that correct?
Correct, they own the land, and there's no formal, the ASP just says basically potential future. The MDP says potential residential, but if you look actually at the land use bylaw amendments, it just is urban reserve. So this is basically saying this is an idea that might happen. In the case that they wanted to do, some say high density residential, they'd have to go through this process again. The MDP would already be amended to allow it, but they'd have to go through, and depending on how big and the scale of it, they'd have to look at doing an amendment to this ASP so that all the details came forward. At that time, you'd look at things like traffic. You'd look at things like servicing, when there's actual details to make decisions off of. There isn't now, it's a hypothetical. And so that's why, the commercial part has more details, and that's what you make a decision off of. But if and when that decision ever came for residential, we'd fire up the whole decision-making process again, looking at all the servicing and traffic and all those kind of things again for that particular part of it. Yeah.
Okay. It was mentioned by somebody there, and I don't know how authoritatively it was, that they would have underground parking, and I don't know if that would happen with the water. But having said that, this to me is going to go through a number of phases. And those phases it goes through is going to take, 10, 15 years?
No, the original time frame that they've mentioned to us, they'd like to have construction start next year to be finished in 2027.
Okay. So then the next part is the housing.
Hypothetically.
Theoretically, yeah.
It could be housing, it could be more commercial, it could be who knows what. Like it's a placeholder right now.
Okay. So bear with me. I appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah, no problem.
So when I look at this, I say to myself, okay, we don't know what the residential is. We don't know what high density. We really don't know it's going to go to seniors or whatever.
Correct.
But it looks like a small community within a small community. So when I read through the documents, there was a sentence that kind of said, what we really are building here is a one-stop shopping. One-stop convenience. So if this becomes a one-stop convenience for anybody outside of Raymond, and possibly for those in Raymond, and they're going to try and service all the needs, and I'm thinking and imagining, so bear with me as I'm imagining, with the housing, with the parking, with the store, with the service station, that's a small suburb in a small town. And they're willing to say, we have lots of parking, so if you're in Raymond, you can use our parking. Is the parking also going to be used for storing RVs or renting spaces? I don't know. But for me, when I look at this, I see it as a core within a core, and it's totally distracting from the document that's going to be amended. The document that's going to be amended with regards to development doesn't take in a 30,000 view of what's happening. Most of the comments have been about a store, service station, whatever. But in actual fact, that's a community within a community. And it's so strong as a core in the documents that I read that you don't really need to go anywhere in Raymond. They will service you 100%. So that's a problem with me of taking away from what they have said years ago, and they're still saying, because I think it was in February I got a document, or it was posted on the internet, showing all the development of the downtown area. There was going to be more parking, there's going to be trees, there was going to be a facelift. I think a lot of people were excited about that downtown development. So what happened to the downtown development that was promised, or everybody was encouraged? Is that now being overlooked totally?
No, so those are two separate things, so I'll just maybe speak to the last portion. Since 2021, we've been working with our Associated Engineering on developing our transportation master plan. We had one done a long time ago, and it needed to be updated. And the Tourism Economic Development Committees back that far, and even before, had talked about, revitalizing the downtown. It needs its facelift. It's the curb in front of the Merc is basically non-existent just because of so many overlays. The concrete medians in the middle are thrashed and don't look good. And so it's time to do that. And so concepts that have been presented were developed not to give a direction as to what should or shouldn't be, was just meant to say, hey, these are ideas to consider. What do you want? So right now, and this is in the plan, but it's subject to change until council approves it in 2028, is that in 2028, after our sewage lagoon high school projects are done this year and next year, and a commercial or recreational opportunity in 2027 if we get a grant are completed, in 2028, the plan is to spend a significant amount of money upgrading downtown. And that's where the public engagement's going right now, to say, hey, if we're gonna pave the roads, before we do that, if we want to do anything different, let's do it before we pave it and then have to rip it up again. If we want to keep it exactly the same and just redo the roads and sidewalks, great, we'll do that, it's cheaper and life goes on. But it's that conversation. So to your other point, Raymond, before Stonegate Meadows came in, is like 8 square blocks, basically, separation. Main Street's in the middle. This proposed development is 3.5 blocks to the east. And it's, when you look at the map now with Stonegate Meadows, where it will be when it does build out, it is almost in the geographic center. And so I mean, again, this is all subjective, and I'm not here to argue with you. You're definitely welcome to have your opinions. I don't believe this is saying that there's a community within a community. It's in Raymond, and it's 3 blocks one way or the other. It's part of the community. And so now, does that mean there won't be a negative effect to the business on down? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. There's really no quantifiable way to prove that. It's subjective and anecdotal at the moment. But definitely, is this if there's housing there, you don't have to leave there. That's only if people decide they don't want to go 3.5 blocks, and I don't think that's highly likely.
Okay, those 3.5 blocks are very long blocks, right?
I'll give you that, yes, 730 feet.
Okay, they're long. So now I want to switch. I don't know if you're familiar with Cochrane, Alberta.
Yep.
What's the downtown area in Cochrane like?
I'm out. I have no idea. I haven't been to Cochrane.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
What businesses are downtown in Cochrane, do you know?
It's a good blend of mom and pop shops and franchises.
So Cochrane Council, despite what is in any book anywhere else, somehow came to a conclusion that we're going to have our downtown. We have a highway going by. We don't want stores going here, here, and here. We're building out, yes, but we're going to build out with residential. Mm-hmm. Downtown, we're going to make a decision that we're focusing on downtown. So if I'm reading the documents, which you've referred to, and I really appreciate you guys have been totally open, I appreciate that. The downtown area they decided on was downtown is downtown, and we're going to insist not only that the big box, whatever, all the stores, if you're coming into our town, you will be downtown. So find out a way. If you've got to buy up property, you got to buy up the property, because we're supporting downtown. Yep. So my understanding is that Cochrane said, this is our plan. It seems like Raymond is saying, oh, somebody comes in, well, let's change our plan. Oh, somebody comes in, let's change our plan. Oh, somebody comes in, let's change our plan.
So that is something, and that's what we've tried to say tonight. Council could say within the municipal development plan that this isn't suitable for commercial development and that it's going to be on Main Street. They can definitely do that.
But will you present that?
Yes.
Well, that'll be presented as one of the options that they consider.
Strongly or mildly, or see, this is another thing. Sorry, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the time. But another thing, everybody wants to walk around very politely, and I understand the rules, I understand what's going on. Everybody's got to be neutral, nobody can have any feelings. That's very cold. That's not a good bedside manner, but that's the way it's structured, okay? So if it's cold and no feelings and no emotion, and sorry guys, we have no control, the United States moved in and took over half of our land, but we didn't have any control. Whatever. I think we have control, because the other thing I found out when I was studying Cochrane was they said we worked 100% with our residents. That's who they worked with. And the residents said, no way, we want our downtown. So I'll close with that. Appreciate you very much. Thanks.
Absolutely.
That's really hard to follow, but thank you, Gerald. So I just have a couple quick questions. I just want to know if, so the council and town, do they have any legal liability against them if they say no?
Like,
If they-
personally,
The town council members or the town as a whole, is there any legal reason, any way that they will be liable if they vote no, we do not want this development?
no, there are definitely ways for them to say no. I'm not gonna, like, my warning has always been to councils, not just this one. Please don't ever come up with a rationale that says you're not making a decision, say based on ethnicity or something like that. Some of these, like, and this is far out of the,
No,
this is far out of the realm.
not based on that.
Right,
but,
absolutely.
yeah.
So is there any ramifications? I'm not a lawyer and I really don't want to
No.
play that game, but if they're making good planning decisions, is there a mechanism through either the MDP or any of these other stages that they could say no? There is a mechanism.
Okay.
There is a mechanism.
So
And
they
I'm
can
not gonna,
say no without liability.
So the only way they could be, to my knowledge, individually have liability for that is if they're saying something outside of that they've learned in closed session that isn't permitted to be shared publicly. Then that's Information Act, or they just changed the legislation. It used to be Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy. Now it's the Information Act and Protection of Privacy Acts. So if they say something that they've learned in closed session that isn't allowed to be shared until after they're dead,
Yeah.
outside publicly, then they are personally liable. Or they could be personally liable
But if they
it's
just
proven
say,
through
no, we
courts.
want to stay with the downtown core.
No, if
there's no
Raymond Council
liability.
says, we are comfortable having a downtown that's here and you have to fit within this space, they're in their purview to do that.
Okay, my next really quick question. The traffic assessment was done, but was that taking into consideration the traffic of a brand new school going there?
Yes.
It was?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great. And you mentioned that the town isn't in the business of development. Does the town own the land where the old soccer fields are?
Yes.
yes.
And are they developing that said land?
Not presently, no.
Is it,
Council could,
is
though.
it subdivided for cul-de-sacs?
It has a subdivision plan that's been on there for, while the soccer fields were being used.
Yeah.
Like, it's been on there for, I don't want to say decades, but the entire time I've been at the town of Raymond since 2008, that plan's been there.
Okay,
So,
So when we say that the town isn't the business of development per se,
yeah.
have we been given direction to subdivide and build any kind of, either seniors housing or high density housing or anything like that? That hasn't been a direction from councils.
Okay.
Do we have parcels of land that we make available for development? Sure, we've got 6 of them on the old
Yeah.
lodge site.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on what you're saying. Are we in the
No, I
business-
just mean like there is
We don't
potential
build
for the
things.
town.
Yeah,
You're not
we
going to be a
don't build
home builder.
things.
You're not going to go build
Right.
houses.
Yeah,
but
we
you'll
don't
sell
build
lots.
houses.
Okay.
If council wants to get into that business, that's their prerogative. Up to this point, we're not in the business of doing that.
Was that sort of what Sugar City Development was about?
Sugar City Development was an intent so we have developers who are fantastic, but the costs to develop are extremely expensive.
Okay.
And so Sugar City Development was meant to allow a corporation that's municipally controlled to assist development to make it more attractive for developers to be successful. And also, since the Sugar City Municipal Development Corporation wouldn't be necessarily profit-driven, they could take the proceeds that they make and reinvest back into the community. So they could fix parks that are in the neighborhood. So it's meant to create a revenue. It was meant, it's disbanded and it doesn't exist anymore. But the intent of it was to create a outside revenue stream that has nothing to do with taxation or user fees from existing residents to enhance development that either our developers weren't currently addressing, like smaller lots or first-time home buyers or density, or seniors housing, up until when we have seniors housing development, kind of address parts of the market that the private sector wasn't meeting.
Okay.
So that was the intent. Was it going to be building the houses directly? It could have, but it never even got to that point.
And just one more. I'm just wondering what the difference in saying controlling a development that is in this parcel and saying no to a marijuana dispensary that a young girl in the community wanted to open a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like, you say you can't control businesses and it's up to the community to decide where they want to shop, but you can a little bit, right?
So the legislation for cannabis is a bit different, though. So
Yeah.
Raymond is prohibition. There's no alcohol allowed to be sold in the community at the present time, and until that changes, that's the reality. Cannabis is different.
Yeah.
Cannabis, even if the council inquired at the time if that prohibition could transfer over, and it wasn't because it's federal legislation and it trumps that. So there is space, if anybody's listening, that wants to open a cannabis store in our industrial park. It can't be within 200 or 300 feet of a school.
Yeah, I just
or
remember
other
the girl
things.
being shut down on it.
Yep, because she wanted to do it on Main Street, and it was within that 200 meter or 300 meter setback that the city of Calgary uses for theirs, that the town of Raymond Council decided to use in our bylaw.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Yep.
So we talked about things being so sudden with this and it feeling to us like it was so sudden, and I can definitely appreciate the need for things to be done in a certain way in a certain time frame. You said the annexation was first brought up when Bryant owned the land, and then it kind of got sidetracked and stuff, but then you said this specific discussion was brought up in 2022, and there was an annexation meeting, I believe it was held sometime in 2023.
I believe so, yes.
So that was posted, that annexation meeting. A notice was posted on the town Facebook page, and a question was asked at that time what the meeting was for specifically. No answer was given. So then one person showed up at that annexation meeting. And then the town concluded, I'm not exactly sure what the exact wording was, but it was something that there was no apparent opposition. Because one person showed up, because no one knew what the meeting was about. So I just want to know, how does that one person constitute public opinion?
Okay, so it was also advertised on our website, and so we're not going to go out of our way to advertise something more than something else, because then we're accused of having bias one way or the other.
Okay.
So our standard process is to advertise it on our website and on social media. And it is incumbent upon residents to participate and be involved and to actually look occasionally as to what's being posted there.
Yeah, I can understand that, but people did look and ask questions about it and weren't answered.
So we don't respond on Facebook. Call us, email us if you have questions.
You do respond on Facebook,
Well,
on the town Facebook page.
let me rephrase. I have given direction to stop doing that. It's been recent, so it wasn't then. But we've
Okay.
had staffing challenges, and everyone here will agree the town of Raymond's communication isn't great. I don't think I'm saying anything that's a secret about responding. It's something that we've been working on trying to improve.
Okay.
But everything we advertise, the public has the ability to click on the links, read through the documents, and inquire. And I don't want to sound polite, but it's not our job to spoon feed information.
No, you're right. It's not.
It's incumbent upon people to
But
be.
it does go back to that idea that only one person showed up for a meeting. How can you agree that that's sufficient?
That's the process.
But it
The
sounds
public-
more like
the
it's a
public
box
is-
check.
Well, I mean, it's a procedure we have to go through, but the public has
Okay.
been advertised, no different than we did with the Stampede Industrial Area Structure Plan that's happened, or with Aspen Point, or with Bridge Crossing, or with Stonegate Meadows, or with Raymond Fitness, or any of these, or even a
Okay.
duplex that happens, right? We do the same process. We send out notices to affected parties, and it's up we wait for responses. And if we're seen to be, hey, everyone, we didn't get any answers on this one, are you sure you don't want to answer? If someone has something riding on it on the other side that it could have been approved, but then all of a sudden there's a bunch of opposition or vice versa, then we're leading to an outcome, it could be perceived, versus just leaving the process be what the process is. And the public response is what the public response is, and then council takes that information. And again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, public comment is valuable, but it's not the only consideration.
Okay.
Right?
Well, and just with that idea that public comment is valuable, I mean, this goes back to what Matt said about having 5 minutes each.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't lead me to think that my comments are valuable when I only have 5 minutes.
Well, I don't know if I should say this in a public setting, but I know there's a scenario where a lot of us attend on a certain day of the week where we're asked to give a speech for 5 minutes, and it's a significant period of time at times. So you can say things in a time period that's concise, but that's why we're trying to say before, if you have more information that's long, write that letter.
Right.
And will council be directed to read everything
Yes,
that we have
they get-
submitted by Friday at noon?
Absolutely.
Well, they'll get
Okay.
everything
Wait, I
Friday,
mean-
sorry.
I will say this, they can read what they choose to read.
Yes.
I have been involved with councils long enough to know, like when we tell them to read the MGA and be familiar with it, they read it for 2 minutes and then go to sleep, like I do too. Like they can read what they're going to read. The challenge is, unless you want to have a meeting stretch into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we have to limit it somewhere. Like and it's not going to go that long. But I understand the point of 5 minutes. But if we don't, we could easily, you have somebody who wants to come up and go for, who knows how long. They put 5 minutes in the, legislation so that people can submit written documents that maybe are more extensive with their information and.
Okay. Yeah, it just.
And just to your point, Whitney, like, if there's a lot of documentation that comes in and council doesn't feel they've had sufficient time to review the documentation and actually fully understand everything and have the chance to weigh it against all the information, they don't close that public hearing. They can
Okay.
adjourn the public hearing to a later date, and then the public will then be invited to witness what's going on, and they can say, okay, is there additional information we need? Did we have that time to review the information we've been given? And then are we comfortable to make a decision now where we can close that public hearing and then start the deliberation process? So
Okay.
it's not going to be forced through unless council decides to pass it all. And
Okay.
again, we're not going to dictate what they will or won't do.
And just one more quick question about the 5 minutes. If I'm signed up to present, if I decide at the last minute that I don't want to, can I cede that 5 minutes to someone else?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
And I will say too, like, the public, definitely feel free to come and ask your questions. If 15 groups have said kind of the same thing, there's not really more that we can say to actually answer that. And so I'm not saying don't do it, but the reinforcement of the point is just as easily done through written submission. And so for those that actually have something that might not have been brought up yet in the conversation, that's what we're trying to give them the additional time to have that access so that council can hear everything that might be new that they haven't considered to this point.
I hate this. So you might have to talk a little dumbed down to me because this is all new. But I just kind of want to understand, like, we have a developer that's saying that we have to have this as commercially zoned, correct? So what if we say, okay, it's not going to be commercially zoned right now because we're like, hang on, this is going too fast. And we don't like the choice that they're giving us. Is there any way to like slow this down, or like why does it have to be this developer? I guess is a big question. Because I mean, maybe my I'm a woman and I like really beautiful things. I like access to things. I like growth. I like change. I'm not opposed to that. I'm opposed to what this is and what it will do to something else that's beautiful and needs some improvement that has lacked in that. And I was on a committee that we tried
And you did an
really
amazing
hard.
job.
No, we got hardly any support, to be honest. We fundraised and we did things, and there was no town support for us to do more. I mean,
Council funds the beautification committee an amount of money that they feel is appropriate. And so
Right.
if you think that needs to be more, that's something you can advocate for, but that's them discussing in their council deliberations how
Right.
much to give. So I would again reiterate, council very much appreciates, as does administration, the efforts that the beautification committee has made and does do. The flower displays, the statue displays, the banners, they're all excellent additions to our community. If we could give you more money, we'd love to, but council has chosen to give that amount, and that's their prerogative.
right. So it's hard to fight them for more. Like, I don't know how, but like if your goal is to make Main Street look a little bit nicer and you're stopped every left and right turn, for lights or whatever. So let's say, what if this goes ahead?
Okay?
And this becomes the hub. Obviously, everybody's going to be driving down the highway, and they're not going to take a right turn to just randomly go to Main Street if this is all right here and the high school's here and the sports field. Am I incorrect in saying that?
No, I mean, that's definitely an assessment you can make. I would just say, I don't think I can promise you there's no appetite on council to see the downtown stagnate and die.
But people have said they know that when they've lived in other towns, this is exactly what happens.
Usually again, this where it gets into nuances of individual scenarios. A lot of times those developments are on like highway frontage, far removed from the urban center. But again, those are some examples. Other times it might be like there's so many different nuances between what the business is, how big it is, what the market type is, the makeup of the community. There's all these variable factors that is impossible to quantify. And that's where the commercial or the consultants that we reached out to said, listen, we can take this data but it's going to be impossible to give you something that's relevant for our community.
Can you give out to all of us all that data so we can see?
Well, I don't have that data.
So what analysis have they done to say, you're going to be fine? Like, how do you say that to somebody on Main Street?
We haven't done analysis, and we're open with that. We haven't done
So
an economic
can we not
impact
do
assessment.
that before they vote on this?
The question is like, I understand what you're saying, and the question is there some kind of a study, or is there some kind of a product that we can purchase from somebody that will be, it will go up and down our streets and say, Merck, you lose 80% or 70%.
Right.
And then, pharmacy, you'll lose 20%. If we thought there was a product that would do that, we'd maybe look at getting it. But what the feedback we've got is none of our neighbors do that. And when we have talked to companies that do it, they say, we can't provide you that. We'll take a guess and we'll take your money. So what our opinion has been is to have none. We'll say, we don't know what's going to happen to the downtown. We're going to let the people who live here, who are on council, who know this town the best, make the final decision on what they think is going to be best. And if the concern is that if the council has the full prerogative to say, we're worried at what happens to other communities when these stores come in, we're locking down downtown. They can do it. They can do it, and they have the prerogative to do it.
Okay, and then my other question was, so you said there was an applicant that comes to you
Yep.
and says, is there just been one applicant? And
Like for this particular parcel that we've worked on?
There's one, the initial inquiry was from one retailer that reached out through Avis and Young. From that, it's been through a series, this retailer doesn't want to build buildings and own property, they're leases. So it's been two different developer groups that have worked through the process to get to this point that would build and develop the spaces for these leases.
okay, so what if they can't keep those buildings leased?
That's up to them to try to juggle those costs. The town.
And then what if they become empty warehouses?
Well,
Then
that
what
would
do
be
we do?
that
And
would be a
whose
different.
responsibility is it to pay the taxes and do?
So the
everything
person
on
who
that?
owns the development is the one who's responsible for the taxation, whether they're occupied or not.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. So like the old school, that somebody owns that.
Yep,
It's sitting, rotting,
Yeah.
nobody's doing anything,
Yep.
correct?
correct.
So that could happen with this if it became an abandoned, let's say, what if
Yeah.
people only decided to shop downtown and not support this, and it doesn't work?
We'd have assets that are taxable still, and the developer would be very motivated to find uses, which could change into indoor recreation space if they're desperate. Like, it could
So
change to
why
anything.
not look at that right now?
Because the developer's not looking to put that in, and we're not dictating, we can't dictate what they do. They're coming with their money, with their proposal, and
So
we can't
that
dictate.
is what makes me want to stop this, because there's only one choice being given because of this developer.
The challenge is, as a business owner, if they come to us with an idea, it's their idea.
Right.
And
And
they
their
get to
capital.
make an application based on their idea.
And I know it's subjective, but you have a lot of people that have a lot invested with their life here,
Yeah.
and they don't care.
Well, that's subjective.
I
Right.
just said
So-
subjective.
Yep.
But you got a lot of subjective people who have big emotions, and their
Yep.
lives and their livelihoods are
Yep.
at stake with it. So we have to be subjective.
Well, council needs, I mean, this is where council has the difficult conversations, because there's definitely validity to every point you said. There's validity to the opposite side that says people need access to more employment locally, or they need access
How
to.
do we know that that's going to happen, though?
Well,
We
emplo-
voted for foreign employees. How do we know that foreign employees aren't going to be coming in and taking over and working here and,
We don't get to dictate who they hire.
Yeah.
right?
But again, that's an assumption. Just as much as it is that it will, it's also that it won't.
Pretty good assumption from what we see at other places.
No. Okay, there's a microphone if you'd like to speak. I'm not sure who
Well,
said that, but
yeah,
we're
I
trying to
mean,
have this
I'm just trying
cordial.
to process it so I know how to word what I need to say to council, because
Yeah.
I'm
I-
not a very good speaker. I'm sitting,
No,
I'm
you're
shaking.
doing fantastic.
But I have a lot of questions, and
Yeah, I think honestly what you do is you write down everything you're feeling and you say, these are my concerns.
Yeah.
Just flat out say them as they are, and council will have to weigh them on the merit of everything that they received, and they'll have to make a decision. And that's why I kind of mentioned before, no matter what their decision is, there'll be people who'll be happy and there'll be people who are not happy. And I ask for grace for them, because it's a no-win situation, especially in situations like this. And they don't get paid a lot, and it's an ungrateful job, but I'm grateful that we have people who aren't politicians, who love this community, who just want to do what's best, and we're grateful to have that.
I'm grateful too.
But please,
I know most of them.
send your letter.
We know each other. I feel like more people need to be informed of exactly what is happening, and that hasn't been the case. So.
No, and definitely make those comments known in your letter.
So I just want to know, this land has not been made commercial yet. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, so then this developer, this has always been this developer's plan.
No, there was a developer first.
No, this developer, the one that owns this land.
A different group purchased it originally,
Right.
sold it to this developer. The
Right.
original group had a different layout and a different
Right.
concept.
Right.
This group has a different one,
Right.
but it's similar.
But the developer that owns this land, this has been his proposal all along, right? Correct?
Yeah, we haven't received there hasn't been like a residential only plan.
No,
and
no,
this one,
no,
yeah.
no.
This is what they've submitted.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my question. Why would somebody sell land to a developer who had this plan for this land when it wasn't even made commercial yet? So in that statement, to me it sounds very fishy.
So
Why would you sell land to somebody?
So the private property owners at the time
Right,
were selling
right.
land to an interested party. There
Right.
was no plan at that point.
There had to have been a plan with that
There was a-
developer.
there
There's
was-
no way he would buy this land.
Well, he had an idea of what he was wanting to
Right,
do.
right.
But that was his idea. He purchased the land, and then he submitted his documentation for that space.
Right, that's right.
Yes.
But if you were to purchase land in hopes of being able to build something there, and we're not talking $20 here, we're talking millions, you said, right?
Yeah.
wouldn't you think you'd make sure that you could actually build that before you bought that land?
I mean, that's an approach they can take, but that's also the risk of development. Some things pan out, some things don't. If they can't get it, they still have the land that they can sell and to another party for another use at a later date.
Okay.
But just in all
That's
honesty,
just what I wanted to know.
no, like, it's a great question. Just in full disclosure, like, nobody has come beforehand and said,
No,
we're gonna do
that's
this,
fine.
and then
That's
we're gonna
fine.
buy this land. Can you tell us yes first? That's never happened, and that won't happen, because that prejudges the process.
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and that's perception.
That's what it looks like.
That's
You've
fair.
said, yep, you're gonna be able to do that. Don't worry, we'll be able to make it commercial land for
Well,
sure.
let me categorically declare that that has not happened.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Any other questions? Not to preempt you, Matt, but just since Matt's already spoken, does anyone else want to come and speak? Okay, just one more, Matt, if you don't mind.
Thanks.
Sorry, one more coming, well, just.
I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you lots of time. Got a lot of stuff going on in my mind. I'm a lifer. I've been in the business for probably 37 years. Yeah, since birth. Plus high school, so we're pushing 40. A lot of things have changed in this town. We did have 2 grocery stores in this town 40 years ago. Got along well. The town was different, 2,500 people, and we survived. And then along came Walmart, Costco, Superstore. It kicked our butt. One of us had to survive, apparently. One retired, sold it. The next guy didn't make it. So we've been one store in this town for 37 years, roughly. Or maybe not quite. It's probably about 30 years. We're still battling the Walmart, the Costco. It doesn't go away. It never goes away. We're too close.
Correct.
We're 15 minutes. I have a good core of constant customers, and we love them. And the rest of it is crumbs that we get. It's my livelihood. That's what I do. I love this community. I love the support, even if it's bits and pieces. That's what we do. This type of a development, and I'm going to say something derogatory here, with this corporate entity, they're ruthless. They're probably the worst one in Canada, in my mind. They don't care about our community. They care about a lease. That's all they care about. They lease the space and they run their business. They got deep pockets. They've been charged multiple times with infractions of price fixing, gouging, even labor laws. They don't care. And now we're going to put them right out our front door. It's a big concern for me and other businesses on Main Street, because it won't just affect, I might be the biggest effect, but it's going to affect the whole community. So this assessment that I feel somehow needs to be made. We see the effects of this on other communities. It's prevalent. Even in Lethbridge, it's there. They sucked everything to the south edge. What happened to downtown Lethbridge? You can't even buy a loaf of bread. It's the way the corporates act. And why did they build the south end of Lethbridge? Because they wanted to draw the rural. Doing the same thing in West Lethbridge. They want to suck everything they can. Smart, corporate design. But in a small town, Raymond, Alberta, I don't know. Can be devastating. I got 37 years. Do you want my advice? I'll be cheap. But we need some information. The impacts of that in small town, and it's everywhere. It's right around us. Cardston, Tabor, Pincher Creek. It's all over, and the same thing happens. There is survival, there is. Not to say that I won't. I can't retire now. But the impact is huge. I'm still, like I say, I'm still suffering it. It's still there. We've grown, but inflation's grown too.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all I gotta say.
No, thank you, Rusty. Thank you very much. Matt?
I appreciate the explanation that was given earlier regarding the benefit of transparency when presenting the three bylaws together, right? Saying that it would be more informative and transparent to present the ASP together with the proposed amendment for the MDP, aside instead of putting it under the table. When it comes to the public notification for the annexation, Whitney had expressed some concern regarding the public not knowing what was going to happen. And the response to that was that it wasn't the town's responsibility to spoon feed the residents. But I think there's a difference with spoon feeding every detail and making sure that everybody is told to check a posting and letting them know what the purpose of annexation is in the first place. And as far as I'm aware, there wasn't anything issued to the public to express what the purpose of the annexation was. The legislation or statutory plans let us know that there needs to be a purpose for the annexation, right? And the purpose for the annexation was known, as it was stated in the report on the negotiations, but as far as I can tell, the residents weren't told that it was being annexed for a commercial purpose, and I'm just wondering why that is.
So, Tyler, I'm not sure if you know the wording on the annexation notice better, or the ministerial order better. Well, you'll know it better than I do, but part of the annexation, whether there's how do I say this? Conceptually, there may have been an idea, but until something's actually submitted, it's a hypothetical. And I think on the last paragraph in that document, it says, and could be commercial, because it wasn't a foregone conclusion that it would be. So, I can't say that there was no, did we have a potential plan for that? Yes. But it's just, I meet with a lot of groups where they come with ideas that never actually pan out. Right? And so until it goes through the process where you've gone through everything and someone submits an application, it's not actually official until then. So I believe on the thing, and I don't know if you have it with you or you remember, but and maybe we can get back to you, Matt, and we can have that in council's report, in the report to council on the public hearing. But commercial was listed as a potential use, but I don't believe it was listed as the only use, because there was no actual guarantee that the development application, that the proposal that was being discussed would pan out. And if it didn't, then it was still open for future uses, residential or otherwise.
Right. What the residents weren't advised that it was even a consideration or a potential use. Like there was no discussion regarding what the use would be whatsoever. And it seems clear to me from the report, but also from the discussion that council had during the council meeting, discussing the annexation, that was going to be the intent, and that the developer was being encouraged to apply for permits. So it seemed to be fairly well established that that was likely going to happen. And I think that the reason why you only had one person attend was because people didn't know what the annexation was likely going to be used for. And so that makes a difference, like especially with previous annexations being primarily for residential purposes. I don't think too many people are usually concerned with the town's borders changing slightly, as long as it doesn't have a large impact on them. I think that might account for the poor attendance.
And that may, but I mean, all I can say is legislatively, the town of Raymond met all its ministerial requirements and the province reviewed everything and said we had done a satisfactory job based on legislation. So is there an opportunity where things could be improved in the future? For sure, maybe, definitely, always. But there was no intent to be deceitful. It was, as I mentioned before, it was the same process that we've established for everything that we've done. And whether or not it was caught or became public attention, I can't say as to the reasons why or that wasn't. But as Tyler mentioned, initially the town was trying to having that land included when the 2009 annexations were done, but we wanted to honor the wishes of the current landowner, who was a valued member of the community as well.
Right.
And so it wasn't worth fighting over something that wasn't necessary. So, and at the time when that would have happened, I don't know if there was even a concept of what might be there or might not be there. When the conversations with the county, the developer was talking about having this proposed development within the county of Warner. Mm-hmm. And our argument to them was, well, how are you going to service it? If it's going to be here, and if the county did the approval, the town of Raymond would have the ability to provide input, but it couldn't necessarily stop it. Gasoline Alley, just outside of the Red Deer, that's where all the business is going, and Red Deer is suffering, right? Because the county's involved. And so the council was concerned that if that were to happen, it's better to have town control over that than leaving it in a county perspective where they can do what they want, what's in their best interests. And plus, since we're going to service it, we might as well get the taxation for it as well, if a commercial development happens. And if it doesn't, the land is still in town that is available for future use, that the town, for whatever that is at a later date. So the intent has always been to look out for the town's best interests. Should a better communication process happen? Maybe, but it was sufficient for council at the time and it was sufficient for the minister, and I'm not going to excuse or make excuses or try to justify it. It is what it is, and it's been like that for...
And there would have been limitations on how much they could have said anyway.
Correct.
Like we talked about the whole, at most you could have said potential commercial. That's it. And any developer looking at that piece of land is going to assume that with its highway frontage on both 845 and 52, that it would be a developable land. Is there any reason to annex it otherwise? The reasons that the town would take it would be for development. The town doesn't care to have a farmer's field in town. That's not its reasons. To think that somehow, I guess that it was some kind of, it was a foregone conclusion that someone would want it to develop it, whatever that was going to be. So, and the amount of detail they could have ever attached to that annexation report, even if they were, and this is before my time, discussing, it would have been extremely limited because of the reasons we talked about. So.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep. I just think that saying even potential commercial development is a lot more informative and also a lot different than a residential development. I think that the town and town's policies and bylaws focus so much on public engagement and the importance of public engagement and consultation. And so I just feel that to say, well, we're just meeting the legal standard and then that's good enough is not very satisfying as a response, really. And I'll just leave it at that, I suppose. But thank you for your
No,
response.
no, and I appreciate that. I'll just say, like, in the end, council decides what the public engagement process is, and that's always subject to change. And will it be what everyone wants? Maybe, maybe not, but it is something that they do. So it's not that we just met our arbitrary legislative requirements. Council was satisfied that the engagement was sufficient. And you can agree with that, but my job is to support them in that, and they did meet the legislative requirements, and they did meet the process that we do for all the other ones. And if we do something more than what we've done on the other ones, then it's, well, there's a perception that we're trying to solicit an answer that's more or less down a direction that we want versus just letting the process happen and letting the public engage with it so that in a natural way. And so that's my only follow-up I'd say is it's not meant to be deceitful, but it was meant to just follow a standardized process so that it's ensuring transparency and fairness. So.
Yeah, I'm not accusing anybody of any
No, I know.
nefariousness, but
I just want to make sure that councils are, because we've had excellent councils the entire time I've been here, and they dictate what those processes are, and that's their right. So if the public feels that more needs to happen, I know council would love to have that input. And they can definitely adjust their participation policies accordingly.
thank you.
Different person, same outfit as Lynn's. Well, we're mom and pop store owners, so I can 100% tell you what big box stores actually do to mom and pop stores. So I'll always advocate for a mom and pop store. But what is the upside of bringing in commercial development for the growth of our community? Like, do we really need that when we have Lethbridge so close by?
It's, in the end, that's the question for council, is what are the upsides, if any? You can make, if you look at the MDP, it says, there are advantages to having a greater balance to your assessment base. Right now, if you were to, if this council is content on putting the load on the residents for residential tax for that, that's their decision.
How much is the tax that the commercial buildings would bring in, like would buffer?
Until they're built, we'd even hesitate to guess. We don't know how they'll be assessed in the end.
Okay. Is it substantial, like enough that it makes that big of a difference, really?
It would be likely enough that it would be.
It would be a noticeable difference.
It would be, yeah, and so.
But that also, just to jump in, it doesn't necessarily, and this is where the nuances get in. There's not a direct correlation that more business taxes are going to reduce a residential tax. Like that is a valid statement. The reality, though, is that more business taxes that come in give additional resources for the municipality to accomplish its goals, and it very well could reduce that, or it may allow the municipality to invest that money into, say, fixing roads that it couldn't do before or would have to take out debt, right? So it does add to the overall economic strength of the municipality, yes. Okay. How does that correlate down to the individual resident? It depends on your house and your assessment and the market and what council decides to do with budgets.
Okay, is there going to be any effect on residential taxes? Are we going to be on the hook for anything as far as the residents? Any cost that would increase our taxes for? No.
The only cost that we've identified that is, and Tyler mentioned this earlier, is straightening that road. Mm-hmm. And that's something we want to do anyway, but we couldn't do it because we don't own the land. Okay. So, and that's, I don't want to, it's less than $100,000. And that's something that we're planning to do anyway for our road, because with the high school being there, so capital grants would be used to do that. It's not a taxation thing. So how we would fund it would not come from the resident.
Okay. My next question, you said that there is no data. Is there a way that we can get that data? I know that there other communities, so. There
is data that's these economic development consultants access from Stats Canada and some other agencies. That's the data that they'll track, but that data is formalized from larger scale centers. Now, we definitely can do it. We definitely can, but administratively, we just felt it's going to cost a lot of money for something that is basically anecdotal, that we probably can make fair assessments on as people.
Anecdotal means something. Like, I'm anecdotal. Like, my situation's anecdotal. right?
Yep.
Rusty's situation's anecdotal, right?
Yep.
And so why are we not considering all of these other communities and their anecdotal
Well,
evidence?
I think council absolutely has the right to
Yeah,
look
they
at those
can.
other communities and do that. Whether or not it's written in a formal report, that, you know, that's what we're not recommending, and not that they don't exist, but they absolutely can look around and say, okay, I don't like what happened in this community, and I don't like what happened in this community. They're allowed to absolutely use their own, you know, they can use that. They can use it.
And I'll even just say, even if it's not recommended, they can still say we want to do it anyway, right? And then we'll go ahead and do it. So it's not like it cannot happen. Can it happen? 100% it can.
Okay. And then you said something, and I had a previous conversation with one of the formal council members, and they had said, oh, we didn't read that bylaw, or we didn't do this, or we didn't do that. How can we stress to the council members that are now representing us that these things actually do matter, and that they need to read some of these bylaws, and they need to read through the thousands of letters, because it means something to every single one of the people that they represent? How can we stress to them that that is why we elected them? That's why I don't run for council, because I don't want to read through 500 different pages.
Yeah.
So, but if I was put in that position, you sure as heck better believe that I would read through things if my decisions affected so many people in the community. So how can we stress to the council that that's their job, is to read through those things, especially on decisions of this magnitude?
Yeah, so we had the election on October 20th. On October 23rd, the Town of Raymond Council, Village of Sterling Council, Warner, Milk River, Coots, we all met in the County of Warner along with the County of Warner Council, and there was experts from Brownlee Law, from assessment, our assessment review board, benchmark assessments out of Lethbridge. There was and then planners from Old Man River Regional Planning Services Commission. There's members from Alberta Emergency Management. They were all there doing orientation sessions that are required through the MGA for council to have within so many days of an election, to try to give them a crash course, if you will, as to what the expectations are and what the requirements are.
Is there follow-up as far as whether they've actually done some of these things?
So
or is that our position to hold them accountable to that?
I mean, there's recommendations we make,
Yeah.
but in the end, it's not like there's a test and a grade and they pass or fail, right? But council does spend a lot of time attending meetings and reading through documentation.
Oh, I believe it.
And so, we stress to them the importance of this information. I do believe that they do read them and they do take the time to make those decisions.
Some of them have actually admitted that they didn't. And
Well, I
that's
can't speak
where-
for that,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
But that's where I'm saying, where do we hold them accountable for reading through things?
You can hold them accountable in elections. And then you hope that those that you voted for are doing what you
Sure.
expect them to do. And administratively, we don't have a whole lot of control over when we send them an agenda, or we send them a brief, or we send them these things, if they read it or not. We hope they do. All we can do is provide them the information and hope that they take it serious enough to read it. By all means, put that in your letter, say, or send it in an email. I really hope you guys are taking this serious and reading it. But administratively, we don't have a whole lot of control over whether or not they read it or not.
But we can guarantee that they will receive every comment
That's it,
for
yeah.
or against
Yeah,
that's
that's
been
all we can
presented.
control.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to ask your questions.
I'll be very quick. So there has been some very excellent comments on this, and I love the passion that everybody's getting into this important discussion. I just want to take a hypothetical scenario and say that, let's just say that council does see value in this. They approve it as presented. The development goes through. There is business. There's money circulating, and we can't speculate as to what dollar value that tax revenue might contribute to our overall tax base. We know that it will be some. Is there a tool or mechanism that you kind of hinted at, Curtis, that could be used to help, say, level the playing field? We all love our downtown core, and we don't want to see anything happen to it like some have suggested. But can we use any sort of tools, political, mechanical, economical, otherwise, to say that some of this tax base can be used to revitalize our downtown core, to give some of those businesses some support to do a facelift or whatever it needs to ensure that they have a better competitive advantage against these big box retailers?
So potentially council could decide to how they want to allocate funds through various grant programs. They have the ability to do that. There is reservation about having a new business is eligible for no taxes for 3 years because they don't want to then give them an unfair advantage at the expense of an existing business that's been here for decades or almost 100 years in some cases, right? So there are tools. How council chooses to do that is hasn't been decided, hasn't been discussed, but it's something that could be. The public could have an opportunity to provide feedback on suggestions, but is it a possibility? Yes. Has it been discussed? No.
So if I'm getting this right, you're wondering, is it possible, say, could council designate every ounce of tax dollars that came for this and said, we're putting it into pavement on Main Street, something like that?
Yes.
Not necessarily every ounce of it, but if there is an increase in our overall tax base and a portion of that comes from this new commercial development, Lindsay spoke beautifully about the beautification committee, wanting help to add value to our downtown. Is there a possibility that council could, through bylaw or otherwise, say that, look, we're going to increase our budget spending to help our downtown businesses better compete, whether that's through appearance and architectural controls or through things that the town's involved with, paving, curb, lighting, and so on?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you so much.
And they would just do it through their budget typically.
Perfect. Thanks, Curtis. Thanks, Tyler.
I'm mostly here to get information, but I've had quite a bit of experience with small towns and bigger cities as well, where developments have gone in and totally destroyed the mom and pop businesses, the smaller places. Even in Calgary, the big city, but when they started building a mall here and a mall there and a mall there, the ones that were the small places where the mom and pop shops were totally emptied and totally destroyed. One other point I wanted to bring up is when there's something announced that's taking place in the town, on the town website, it's almost impossible to find the information. The search field either doesn't work or it doesn't find what you're asking for. Unless you know exactly where it was parked, you aren't going to find it before it's over. I've tried, and I'm a bit familiar with computers. I know how to search for things.
So no argument there. We are in the process of getting our website redeveloped and we'll definitely
Don't follow Calgary's
We'll definitely
example.
seek for public comment as to what they'd like to see and what they don't want to see, because there's no argument here. It does have some challenges.
I would say too that if you're looking for something in particular, email us or call us. I get that, if somebody's like, I don't want to poke around your website for 30 minutes to try to find something. Can you just tell me where it is or email it to me? I'm more than happy. I think all of us are open
Curtis
to
knows I bother him quite a bit.
Right, but you're right.
Bother's not the word.
Yeah. No, we're in the process of a website redesign right now.
It really needs it, but just make it so you can find it, even if you search it.
Duly noted.
I search something, I find something in 2001, but I don't find anything more recent.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Bev. Okay. I'm not sure if that was a clap for Bev or a clap that we're over, but either way, we'll give a clap for Bev because thank you for asking that. If there's any other comments, we don't want to end this early, but if there are no more comments, we'll definitely end this as soon as we can. So any last comments?
I actually have one more comment, sorry.
Okay, no, thanks, Whitney.
Brittany asked this question, and it was kind of in amongst another question, and I don't feel like you answered it. But she asked if commercial taxes will lower personal taxes. And I think that's a common misconception that a lot of residents in this town have.
I mean, there's a potential it can, but there's a potential it can't, right? So the budget is what the budget is. Council's going to say, these are our expenses, these are our revenues, right? So if we get an influx of, say, just random number, $150,000 that's coming from commercial taxes that's new, council could choose to say, okay, we're still going to take the same amount of money, and because we got this extra $150,000, we'll then be able to take $150,000 less. That is a potential possibility.
It's a potential, but it's never been done in this province, in the history of this province.
Oh, no, I don't, I mean, I would agree with you, that's not the norm, but I would not say that that has never been done. The challenge, though, is how, even if they did do that, technically residents may still pay more in taxes than the year before because it depends on how their house assessment is interacting in the market. So your assessment is not, there's different classes of assessment. So if your house is built in like 2010 to 2020, it's in a class. If it's in 2000 to 2010, it's in a class.
Yeah, I understand all that, but essentially that would be council's decision.
Absolutely.
Correct.
But
Council
it's never been
decides.
done in the history of the province.
Well,
So-
I will push back that it's never been done, but governments are not known typically to go back. And I'll just be honest, like, despite the public perspective, we do try really hard to be as lean as we can. You're never going to agree with every decision of spending, but we do try to be as lean because we pay taxes too, and I don't want to pay any more than I have to. That being said, our costs go up just like everybody else's. And so if we hold back on that a lot, at some point it's a big increase versus just gradual increases over time. And that's the age-old question that councils have to wrestle with. And nobody's happy with taxes, myself included. And it just is what it is. So can it happen? Yes. Will it happen? There's no guarantee.
Thank you very much for the evening. I've heard a couple of comments about the beautification of the Main Street, and I've seen that through Tabor and Coaldale, how they did that. It was awesome. I drive up and down Main Street probably 20 times a day, it seems like. And I find that the worst thing is the parking in the center where they can pull in anyway. You can put as many yellow stripes as you want on that one side, and people are backing in, turning around, U-turns. If they're going to beautify anything, put a cement curb through there so they can't drive through and pull U-turns in front of you when you're coming down the street. It's a real problem on our main drag, and it shouldn't be. If it's set up to pull in one way, that's the way you should be pulling in. I know a policeman was standing at the post office on the top step of the post office this year, and I pulled in from Main Street and went east and parked on this side of the road and walked across the street, and he almost clapped me on the back saying, if that's the way we're supposed to do it. We're not supposed to flip U's in front of the post office. We're not supposed to pull in Main Street the wrong way. He says, we're starting to charge people $350 tax or whatever on that if we catch them. And so every time I go to the post office and somebody pulls in the wrong way, I walk in the post office with them and say, you know that you could just pay out $350 for what you just did. So anyway, that's the one thing. Beautification on the Main Street is lovely in most of those towns where the signs, you can drive down and see the signs of the stores instead of passing the store and then see the sign, because it's not facing the wrong way, facing the road instead of sticking out. That works awesome. And the plant life, we can get rid of all those trees that have all those seeds falling down all the time, and prevent people from parking in the wrong direction.
Duly noted. Thank
Just
you.
a thought. Thanks.
Without incriminating myself, I'll try not to do that in front of you again. So, anyone else? Last call. Eric and I had the privilege of attending a meeting already today together. So
Yeah, we did. Should be pretty easy to answer, but so a couple of council members that I've talked to since your first council meeting have said that they're under the impression that if we deny this proposal, that the town or council is somehow obligated to find him another spot to do that. That's not true?
No.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. The public hearing, again, like I said, is on Monday, 6 o'clock. If you'd like to have written submission, please have it into the development office by noon on Friday. We appreciate all your comments. If you are registered to speak, please be concise, but if you have more you want to say, definitely make sure you write as much as you want in the letters. And again, I wanted to thank each of you for coming out, and I do want to thank council. They are my employer, so it doesn't hurt to shout praises to your bosses, but we are blessed to have incredible people that I think you would all agree, who live in this community, who want what's best for the community, and they're not in an enviable job. So again, once again, ask for grace, is whatever the decision they make, it won't make half the community, well, I won't say half. There'll be people who aren't happy and there'll be people who are not. So thank you very much.